more than anything. They do. They show called.
Got it right?
Yeah, but the name, so even the best of times, I still lose to like, I got 48 hours. So I completely lose.
I think we're still waiting for a few more people, so we'll get started in a few minutes.
It's
Some
just,
of our, we just wander around the street for like, that's what I was saying later.
I love fine. You think it's down?
I can buy it, I've been dealing with my mom. I never end up, my clients are at least one something like that. See, and then because my mom's sort of doing better, I can kind of.
I mean, you always go by, I mean, we always go by numbers first.
Yeah, you look good, you got a little color.
I was actually just working on the laptop, I was in Bryant Park.
I was reading it today, a couple of times.
Yeah, it was great. It's beautiful.
Today.
No, I still found I was able to sit down, find a little table.
Oh, yeah. Pretty much always.
Yeah, it didn't take too much work.
When I started going to Brian Park, 1960s. Thought it wasn't a long distance.
Yeah, I'm aware, I heard you were.
And I would go there, and there were no chairs. So if you wanted to eat lunch, you know, the concrete railing that's around,
About it.
lined up, shoulder to shoulder, that's the table. And you
It sounds miserable.
no tables, no restaurant.
I remember that.
Well, we thought it was great because it was a place to go around.
Right, you didn't know anybody.
And then they took over and had transformed it.
Yeah.
What?
That's crazy.
You can go in there today, you can play chess, and you can do yoga, and you can watch a movie, and
Yes.
No, you don't. And you know, we just look above that and of course higher.
beat him up. I have space, who runs this.
Yeah.
Just can't really get any traction.
Yeah.
But,
He's an absolute
I,
control.
participate,
And he wants to regulate
like,
what
you know,
goes
they
on.
just continue to push.
And then that goes to everything, from the kind of furniture to the kind of.
I think so.
Pennington,
Thank you very much.
the restaurant, the movie restaurant, et cetera, et cetera.
Benevolent
Dictator.
dictator.
Got Ira, the guy who's getting
Broadway.
now, May first, is his last day
I mean,
supposedly.
it's really better.
But he went to the courts and he put in,
Nobody was not worth like, don't
he put in some kind
Now,
of,
of course, you know.
I don't wanna
you
leave
go
it
just
this
with
way.
sick.
Okay.
we'll see if that gets him past May first.
So that,
Interesting, but my daughter went for the last time, and everybody's going for the last
the
time.
RIU,
They love that place.
on our block.
Yes. They have the 1-2 blocks away from your.
Where's their lives?
It looks like a Santa. And it looks like a insane asylum.
Oh, yeah,
Or
There
penitentiary,
you go.
not in a good way, it's not flattering.
Is that official?
Yep, that's official. Good evening, everyone. My name is Mark Hirschberg. This is the Landmarks Committee of Community Board 5. And we have 4 items on the agenda tonight. The first one is 16 East 16th Street. But just as a reminder for those people who are joining virtually, please have your cameras on pursuant with the open meetings law. And as like every other meeting, the procedure is pretty straightforward. We're going to start with a brief introduction from each applicant. They'll give a full and uninterrupted presentation, and following that presentation, we'll move to questions for members of the committee. And then once members of the committee have the chance and opportunity to ask their questions and get answers, then we'll open up the floor to members of the public, who will then have an opportunity to ask questions, make comments about the application or issue. And then we will go to business session, which is only for members of the committee to discuss the matter. And then We'll take a vote and then the outcome of that vote will become the official position of the committee. Then it'll go to the full community board, next month, I believe. And then, whatever happens there will, become the official position of Community Board 5 and be forwarded to LPC and any relevant agencies and elected officials. Our first applicant, are they here? 16. Okay, perfect. The floor is yours. Yes, please.
Good evening. My name is Noah Desiante.
Right over here, please. And some of us don't hear well,
Yes, speak loudly, please.
so please speak loudly and slow.
Good evening. My name is Noah Desiante, project manager at BKSK, and I'm here with Jackson Adams, one of our interns, and we're here to present 16 East 16th Street proposal for a second canopy. The project is currently being celebrated at the Lucy Moses Preservation Award for the restoration of its historic ground floor. So just for some context, 16th Street is a recently completed new hotel with 2 entrance portals. On the right is the hotel entrance, and on the left is the restaurant entrance. In the 1950s, the original ground floor was completely destroyed. And in 2019, which was the last time we saw you, for the ground floor and rooftop addition. We're happy to have the opportunity to come back and show you the results pictured here. So since then, the team has completed the restoration of both the ground floor and the 7th floor gable rooftop, carefully reconstructing R.H. Robertson's original architectural intent. So the restored facade features traditional cut sandstone from Ontario, reflecting the building's original materiality. And tonight we're here proposing the addition of a second canopy, this time at the restaurant entrance on the left. So to orient you, the site sits at the southern tip of the Ladies Mile Historic District. You can see here the render on the right for the already approved canopy at the hotel entrance, which received staff level approval in compliance with standard LPC guidelines. The reason why we didn't see you was because single canopies can be approved at staff level for compliance with LPC and DOT guidelines. So here's a side-by-side rendering. On the left is the approved canopy at the hotel entrance, and on the right is our proposed second canopy at the restaurant entrance. So a recent change requested by ownership was updating the canopy, the color of the canopy fabric from a burnt orange with black lettering to a burgundy with white lettering for a more refined look. And just like the first canopy, the second barrel canopy is designed to sit neatly within the restored sandstone portal. And we're happy that we can still see the facade details from all typical viewing angles. The canopy will be anchored by bolts to the underside of the arch, and to avoid harming that restored masonry. And the intention is to follow a joint line. So here we have the rendering that shows the original staff approved design for the canopy at the hotel entrance prior to the color change, still showing burnt orange with black lettering. And now here is our proposed second canopy at the restaurant entrance in the updated burgundy and white scheme. Importantly, this canopy helps restore the visual balance to the facade. So the building is not perfectly symmetrical, but the second canopy creates a more cohesive look. So the stonework at the restaurant is slightly narrower and features griffins, which we carefully restored based on R.H. Robertson's original architectural drawings. Also worth noting, we approved shop drawings for the single canopy. It's not installed yet, but we hope to have it installed soon. So per LPC requirements, the canopy, the legs will remain 18 inches back from the curb with proper footing beneath the sidewalk. The canopy height will be 10 foot 8 inches at its lowest point, which is above the 8 foot minimum per LPC and DOT guidelines. And it features an open barrel vault with 3 of the landmark approved light fixtures integrated into the underside. So this is a section of the approved hotel canopy showing the 3 exposed light fixtures attached to that aluminum frame, just cladded in the canvas. And the intention is just to duplicate this at the restaurant entrance. And these are just spec sheet of our lighting fixture. So we're using proposing surface mounted downlights just short of 6 inches. There's some more specs. We've also selected a matte dark bronze finish to keep with the palette of the building. And finally, here are some precedents of nearby ground floor canopies. These examples are either within or very near to the Ladies Mile Historic District, with multiple facades having 2 canopies at the upper right. There's some more precedents of some canopies in or near the district. And just for record, again, here's our previously approved canopy, which we're just simply duplicating to help establish that balance.
I'll open it up to members of the committee if they have any questions.
Is there any lighting?
In the canopies?
Like shining down, or is there any of the letters backlit?
Oh, no, just the 3 lighting fixtures on the underside of the aluminum structure. Showing here. Yeah. That's my lighting.
So, can I talk to him?
Yes, questions.
The original canopy for the hotel was approved, and now you're putting one on this. That would be the west, or the east of it,
So west, so here
further towards the Hudson River, not towards the east river, on 16th Street.
it's toward
California,
the park.
as opposed to England. That is one way to do it. No?
The original canopy that was approved is on the right side of the facade, this here. And then we're proposing the second one, at the left.
Okay, so are they identical?
They're identical, yeah.
But one says the building and the other one says
The restaurant.
and the lighting is the same in both?
Yeah, it's just.
And the dimensions are the same in both, pretty much?
Yeah, same.
Exactly?
Exactly the same.
And also, to your knowledge, there wasn't a second canopy at any point previously, right? Looking at like tax photos or anything.
Not to my knowledge, no.
Any other questions before we open it up to members of the public? Is there anyone from the public? Okay. So then we'll open it up to members of the committee to make comments. Aaron? Sorry, Suzanne.
The other Karen. I think looks great. Congratulations on your award. And I think the color is nicer. So well done, you. I have no problem with it.
Okay. Tony, you love canopies, right?
I
What are
think
your
I
thoughts
like
about this?
I like the seven.
If the committee wants to go with it, I will not make a fuss, but typically we see canopies for the primary entrance to a building, usually not a secondary space, creating more sidewalk clutter, all that kind of fun stuff. I think the committee's okay with it.
What does the rest of the city feel about this?
I can't see from here, but when you say sidewalk clutter, are the supports down on the sidewalk or is it just, projected from the building?
So what comes down,
Yeah.
up to for pedestrians and new.
Oh, I see now.
I'm assuming they're gonna have outdoor seating and whatnot, if it's you know, restaurant space. And then there,
Oh, sir, proceeding?
Can we stop whispering and speak a little louder, please?
that's a separate application,
I guess that's separate out.
and not for us, not for us.
Okay. So sounds like there isn't any opposition to this, another motion. We can roll on. Okay. Now we take it to a work. There you go. John? Yes. Michael?
Yes.
Neil?
Yes.
David?
I don't think it's
Yes.
down.
Yes.
Roger?
Yes.
Justine?
Yes.
Zona?
Yes.
Suzanne?
Yes.
Yes.
Tony?
Yes.
And Laura?
Yes.
All right. Thank you very much. So this, will now go to the full board. I think it's next month and, it'll be voted on there. But you don't need to attend the presentation. You're welcome to, but there won't be like an opportunity to present or anything. It's just a meeting. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. May 8th. Full board.
May 8th. Thank you. And so our next application is from 284 Fifth Avenue, and this is an application for signage and window replacement. Okay. We're on a roll tonight.
I like it.
They're actually presenting, or I think they presented to LPC today. Not sure what happened, but the meeting, we got like, maybe like 10 minutes.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Jillian Comazar, and I am joined by my colleague, Pierre Taruse. And we are representing Karen Pierce Stone and Architectural Services. Tonight, we are here to present the proposed exterior renovations at 284 Fifth Avenue. Built between 1888 and 1890, 284 Fifth Avenue, also known as the Wilbraham, was designed by David and John Jardine as a bachelor apartment hotel. Shown here in its current context, it is an 8-story Romanesque Revival style individual landmark located at the northwest corner of West 30th Street and 5th Avenue in South Central Midtown Manhattan. This timeline of photos from 1893 to today illustrates the continuity of the building's upper floors alongside a series of changes at the street level. In 1893, with the awnings retracted, we can see the storefront is segmented by mullions and features large lettering reading fine china and cut glass on the cast iron spandrel panels above. This 1907 image captures the 30th Street facade with the awnings extended and features matching signage with the words pottery and porcelain. In 1930, we can see a transitional state of the storefront. The awnings and spandrel panels were removed, but the mullions remained. We can also see that the transom windows were recessed and there was a bulkhead below the storefront. And in 1940, we can see an evidence sign band was added in place of the spandrel panels, now positioned in front of the cast iron column. New awnings were installed below their previous position, allowing us to see the transom windows above. These 1998 designation photos indicate that the molding was present on the 30th Street bulkheads, while the 5th Avenue bulkheads had already been removed. Additionally, the granite veneer and signage boxes with large raised lettering were installed sometime prior to landmark designation. These photos document the most recent conditions prior to the installation of sidewalk sheds in July of 2024, which now limit clear views of the first floor facades. And here we see images that provide views of the storefronts behind the rolling shutters. These are currently housed within the signage boxes covering the transom windows. This 2012 Google Street View shows storefront windows with mismatched mullions that were replaced without a permit. Although the exact date of this work is unknown, part of this application seeks to resolve this violation. These recent photos taken after the sidewalk sheds were installed show the storefronts at their current condition. We can see the replaced storefront windows each have 3 panes without mullions in between them. We can also see the current condition of the 5th Avenue granite and 30th Street bulkheads are in need of repair. These current elevations do not show the Shalom Brothers signage or awning, as their removal was approved under a previous staff level application. That removal revealed the historic glass infill behind. These elevations do reflect the vinyl wraps on the existing signage boxes and vinyl window stickers, both of which were also approved at the staff level. These elevations highlight the portion of work that we will be covering, and we can now begin to detail our proposed changes. At the 5th Avenue facade in plan, we can see the existing signage boxes that house the rolling shutters are very dense at 19 inches deep and extend beyond the storefront, partially covering the brownstone. By removing the rolling shutters, our proposed signage boxes can have a much slimmer and lighter profile at 4 inches deep and a reduced width so they do not extend over the brownstone. A 3-inch gap between the facade and the new signage reveals the transom windows behind. Attached to the signage box is blade signage at the street corners, which we will cover in more detail later. These elevations give us a better visual overview of the demolition and proposed work at 5th Avenue. Along with the general cleaning of all the existing materials on the first floor, we are proposing to replace the existing granite cladding with a darker granite at the step, column, and curb below the glass storefronts. The new granite veneer at the column includes the engraved numbers 284. We're also proposing new doors with interior vinyl window stickers and new adhesive mullions at the interior and exterior panes of the storefront windows. Similarly, on the 30th Street facade, our work aims to clean the existing materials and replace the existing imposing signage boxes. At the interior of the 30th Street facade, we are proposing an interior soffit, which is included in the scope due to its relation to the existing transom windows that you will see in later slides. From these exterior elevations, you can see, along with the replaced signage, we are proposing to paint the storefront black to unify it with the 5th Avenue facade, new window stickers at the left entry, new mullions to match the style of the existing historic infill, and new bulkheads below. On the right, looking at the interior elevations of the 5th Avenue facade, we can see the placement of the proposed mullions and profile of the new door. On the left, we can see in the image that the transom windows were painted white to conceal the view of the rolling shutters and signage box on the exterior. Interior renovations received LPC and DOB approval in a previous filing, as mentioned before. This work is included in the scope due to the new soffit's relation to the transom windows above. Here you can see sections of the 5th Avenue vestibule with the new door, granite cladding, and signage box that had the 3-inch gap to reveal the painted transom windows behind. The signage box has a reduced length, so it no longer extends past the mullion line of the storefront below, further reducing its overall presence as a whole. At 30th Street in detail A, you can see the current bulkhead consists of plywood framing and sheetrock and lacks proper insulation. Therefore, we are proposing a new fire-rated bulkhead with molding reflecting the Romanesque revival style of the building. And again, you can see the signage box has a reduced height to meet the mullion line below. Closer photos of the 5th Avenue facade show the damaged granite veneer with worn down adhesive traction strips, and the window joints. Here we see the adhesive mullion details, which will be applied on the interior and exterior of the glass. On Fifth Avenue, we are proposing a straight profile mullion to match the surrounding existing storefront trim. Taking a closer look at the 30th Street facade, we can see the shape of the historic infill and the damaged condition of the current bulkhead. Detail A shows the proposed adhesive mullions with a similar profile to the existing historical infill. At the bulkheads below, we are proposing to reintroduce the molding we saw in the historical photos. Details B and C show their proposed profile that reflects the Romanesque Revival style. This rendering illustrates the proposed elements in context shown alongside the existing conditions for comparison. This image shows the extent of the granite we are proposing to replace on Fifth Avenue. Looking at the proposed veneer section, detail B, we can see the application of the new granite and the engraved numbers are 1/4 inch deep and 5 3/4 inches tall. Here in detail B, we can see the new granite cladding at the curb and entry step. Our proposed granite now includes 1/2 inch nosing and 3/8 inch engraved anti-slip grooves at the step. Here we can see more in-depth specifications for the proposed signage on Fifth Avenue. On both facades, the new signage boxes have a reduced size in all directions, as well as the size of the lettering. And the same for 30th Street. The new signage boxes are black aluminum with a 4-inch overall width. The 1-inch thick lettering projects 1/2 inch from the face of the signage box. These letters are backlit by internal low wattage LED mats and are an opaque white acrylic material to create a flat white appearance during the day and a glowing effect at night. In detail D, you can see a proposed attachment method showing the new signage will be attached through the wooden frame of the transom windows and anchored at the interior ceiling to avoid further alterations to existing historic material. However, this attachment detail is subject to change. Once the removal of the existing signage boxes is approved and the existing conditions are revealed to us, we will work with our signage specialist to further detail the attachment method and possibly reuse existing connection points. As previously mentioned, we are proposing blade signs, shown in detail A, at the corners of the new installations along Fifth Avenue and 30th Street. They will be mounted directly to the proposed signage boxes, avoiding any disturbance to the historic materials. Both blade signs project 14 inches from the face of the box to ensure neither project more than 18 inches from their respective facades. This slide represents the materiality of the existing water table, new darker granite, glass windows, the new storefront paint color, and black metal signage. Our renders tie in all of the elements discussed to give you a general idea of our proposed work on 30th Street. A closer look at the new bulkhead. And finally, on Fifth Avenue. We believe our proposal thoughtfully balances the needs of the current use with a respectful approach to the site's historic character. We appreciate your time and consideration.
All right, thank you very much. Do you have any questions, members of the committee? Mike?
Could you go back to the beginning where you had a color picture of the building, a standalone current? No full, yeah, like that. That's good. That's good. I gotta tell you, I've been walking by that building for a lot of years. About a century, it feels like. That is a magnificent looking building. Remember, there used to be a karate studio up on the second floor. They advertised and then they left the signs in for many years. I just love that building. It's called Ungapachka. You know what that means? Ungapachka. It's got a lot of stuff. Oh, look at it. It's filled up with stuff. It's Ungapachka. Like that. I love the building with the mansard roof and all of that. But I don't have any complaints. I'll leave that to you architect people.
You have a question for applicant?
That was my question.
Okay. Could you say the word again?
Ungapachka. You have to spell it in Hebrew. But if you say Ungapachka, well, no.
I have a question. So you're completely replacing the storefronts on 30th Street and Fifth Avenue. I'm wondering if you considered unifying them. If one of them has a base along the bottom and the other one does not. And I understand that's the existing condition, but why not make them, or did you consider making them uniform? Why they have different expressions on the two sides?
So we are just replacing the granite. And the windows were replaced at a previous time, without a permit. So that's to legalize these windows that exist today. And on the 30th Street, we are, again, maintaining the windows, and we're replacing the bulkhead, the construction of the bulkhead.
The base in yellow or in brown? Sure, which one is the existing is the top and the proposed is the bottom?
Yes, so this is existing. And so it will keep the same shape and volume, but it'll be painted black and have molded on the front of it.
So, and follow-up question to that. So why are you changing? Because both storefronts are existing non-compliant and you're trying to legalize them today. Why change just Fifth Avenue? Oh,
So when we did a probe of the bulkhead, when you drilled through the plywood base, you could see straight through to the radiator and the sheetrock inside. So there's no insulation or anything.
or for technical reasons you want to approve it.
Can you say more about, the window, reason for changing the windows before and, why it's just coming up now?
We don't know when the windows were changed or why.
And to add to the current tenant, when they received the building, the window panes were replaced. But they don't know when or how, and ownership also doesn't have an answer. So it's just kind of, they're kind of stuck with the windows as they are, and, you know, also replacing all the windows has its own challenges that we would like to avoid. So that's why they're just like, all right, can we use the window that we have, the glass that we have, and just go around it with this.
What is it about the windows that are not, approved, like, what makes them not approved by LPC? Just that they didn't go.
Yeah.
They replaced them without a permit.
Okay,
They were replaced with a permit, and then they had mullions, and now they're just butt joint glass.
is that something that would usually be assessed at the staff level?
Could be assessed as stock level use. But
It's
because
just
of the
the
additional
panes.
signage and all this stuff.
Right. But for the windows in particular, it's
Correct.
like, we're just talking about the panes, we're not talking about like the material around them or anything like that.
No, I mean, when they replaced them, they could have replaced all the frames around it. Luckily, we have the historical infill around the 30th Street that we must maintain. On the Fifth Avenue facade, all of that, it's from the historical pictures that we have. It was removed, that bulkhead was removed prior to even that change. There was some mullions on those glasses, but because we don't exactly know when that was replaced in the history of the building, it's just sort of hard to pinpoint if they changed the entire window installation or just the glass in the frame. On 30th Street, they just replaced the glass because the historical infill is there.
To your knowledge, do you know when the ownership of the building changed? Was that something recent or?
Recent. Less.
Just
The blade sign, is that lit?
Could we look at the blade sign again, please?
Is there any illumination to the sign?
You should set the road.
The sign boxes have backlit letters,
Yeah.
not the blue ones at all.
Got it, okay.
You mentioned, an adhesive mullion. Can you tell us a little bit about that? It's a sticker?
It's basically, yeah, it's basically one that goes on the glass to kind of recreate the condition without having to replace the entire glass panel.
And it's flat, one dimensional?
Yeah, I believe. It has some, like, minor that.
And, but I know a lot of this is just legalized what's kind of been done. Was there any thought given to actually doing a restoration? You said that some of the historic detail on the Fifth Avenue side was removed. It looks like on some of your pictures, it shows pretty hefty column on the floor above, which probably came all the way down. And it may actually be in that center granite enclosure. Any interest in trying to actually restore the window front?
So when we did a walkthrough of the site, we looked behind that granite cladding at that column. And the only thing that remains is the concrete, and even that is damaged, so there's really no historic material or infill remaining behind that column.
And to relate to that, you can see in the history that the actual signage box was lowered at some point to kind of go across that. And the cast iron on top has been dilapidated. It's not in the greatest condition, so we are trying to keep the conditions of the building as best as possible without addressing it too much on the changes that we're doing with the shadow boxes. And that's why I think the conclusion of keeping it at the same location with sort of smaller approach, with letting the building be a little bit more present, was the directive that the client took on that regard. There was a discussion early stages of breaking the signs apart. But that's exactly when we did the walkthrough and we looked behind that granite, so it's literally falling apart. And you can see that that entire pillar has been just through the thick and thin of things. But it would represent like much of a financial challenge for the client to kind of approach it that way, which is kind of what they decided to go with the less intrusive route, I guess. Karen,
Yeah, along the lines of Tony's questioning the historic fabric, it looks like on page 24, you did uncover a decorative column that was part of the storefront. It seems to have a little bit of an arch and a Doric look. Am I?
that is to remain. That one,
Yeah, so I guess I'm not understanding, where is that?
30th Street. So on the glass of 30th Street, the surroundings, and that's so the glass of 30th Street was at some point replaced, but they did not touch the historical infill of that window frame, correct? On Fifth Ave, all of that was removed at some point, and all of that is just straight aluminum profiles.
Do you mind just showing us where that exists on 30th Street elevation? There's enough information there that if you wanted to replicate it, you know, what the original storefront looked like.
For 30th Street, we don't know if typically they would match at some point, right? But the actual transom windows above were not in the same location in both locations. So it's kind of hard to tell if we wanted to replicate all of this. We are replicating that detail within 30th Street to kind of make it match, but because of the Fifth Ave, so glass has been, you know, the entryway door has been changed, the profiles have been changed to try to replicate just the mullions in the center where the buttons of the glass is, would look very out of place. Because it will be just those. If we wanted to replicate all the frames and all that stuff, there could be enough historical context to do it. But it's still, it would be a guesstimate in terms of addressing it because there have been significant changes at the street level of this building. In the conglomerate it is with different things.
Okay, my next question is about accessibility. It looks like the door on 30th Street still has a step to it. So how are you providing accessibility?
There's a secondary door on 30th Street. You can see it here right under the arch, but it says Karen Pierce. That is flush with the street. So you can access the space through that entryway.
Okay, and can you just show me where the non-accessible door is on Fifth?
Okay, correct.
So the primary entrance is not accessible.
The storefront entrance is not. You have to go to the secondary,
So
30th
that's not
Street.
really, doesn't really meet the intent of the accessibility law.
It's all connected, so it does, but there is that little curve there. You have to sort of grind and go or put a ramp outside.
I'm still confused where this blade sign is, and are there a lot, on this block and in this area, have you observed that? Take a look at how much use there is of blade signs in this area, in this historic area.
So the blade signs is on the corner of the building, so right, let me show you in a second.
Okay.
So the,
I can't tell from this picture, but can,
So this is the corner of 30th and Fifth. And then at the edge of the signage boxes, the plate sign comes out of the face of this new signage box.
okay, in the middle of the block, sort of
and the corner of the block.
corner of the block.
And in terms of other signage and other blade signages, actually directly across from us, we have the new Miele Tower with the flooring. I think they did like a whole brand new super modern. And there is a lot of big signage and a lot of smaller blades around that block. And I think among most of this area with that, so it is not something strange to this mountain.
And installing it, I think you probably covered how you're doing it safely.
Yeah, so it's gonna be straight on the new signage box, so it won't touch any of the existing.
And they felt that without it, it's just a very necessary directional sign to help the business.
Yeah, I think the perception from a pedestrian point of view, because we recessed the sign, the sign was 18 inches. We recessed it so much that the perception of it, because it is about 12 feet high, give or take, you don't really perceive it from a pedestrian point of view, and that's why we have this very tall glass and all that stuff. So when you're walking in the direction of the street, having the blade signs would be helpful.
Thank you.
Any further
Questions from everyone?
Like, just a quick one. Are these Stone and Architectural Company, that's the real company that's moving in there?
Yes.
And are they helping with this? Are they helping with the redoing of the building?
We're paying for it. Yes.
They're paying for it.
And the reason why they want to do all this stone also is also because, it's kind of vibe to
Do
it.
they own the building?
No.
But they're paying for the side work? Okay.
I think that's a good point, right? Because they want it reflective of their competency.
I think that's also why, if you look at the current conditions, the building address at 284, it's on the existing oil core signage boxes. And they say, well, we have the skills, we have the tools that sort of engrave it into the pillar of the buildings and give it a little bit more direction. Because right now, it's on the core, it's that silver little letters there.
So what are they doing? I don't understand.
So in the granite pillar on Fifth Avenue, right there.
This one?
No, right on the middle one, right here. Sorry, right here. We're replacing that granite because the granite's fallen apart and it's broken, and they're engraving the name, the number of the building into the stone.
Always if there's any questions. You?
No, I just was reading in my head.
All right, is there anyone from the public there? We'll go to, business session now. Any comments, what do people feel about this? The two different issues there.
Like what? What do you think?
Well, the signage, legalizing windows.
Yeah, I don't feel the storefront is appropriate at all. I don't like that it's not unified across the store. It feels very modern. You have glass to the sidewalk on one elevation and a base on the other. It's a little bit of a disconnect. And you have butt glazing, which is not typically. The doors are all glass windows without stiles and rails and
Okay, so we typically don't approve acrylic doors. And we just feel the storefront is not appropriate for the building for a lot of people.
The sign I'm less concerned about, it also bothers me that they're making an improvement like this and not making it more accessible. Somewhat interpretive, I suppose, you could claim hardship, but I feel. But for those reasons, I'm not in favor of the short, the sign I'm less concerned.
I think it's a missed opportunity. You know, usually when we see new tenants come in, it is more of a restorative component, an application that we see. This is something that was illegally done. And I know it usually comes down to cost, but kind of like, how can we get away with just doing the basics? And, you know, I mean, especially the adhesive mullions, that's pretty interesting. I've never seen that before, and it seems, it just seems very odd. But again, inappropriate, I think is the word. There's a missed opportunity to do a better restoration because there are components that are visible. It could be recreated, but it's a more expensive route, but it is a landmark. The signage, I don't think it's an issue. It's too bad that the transoms won't be exposed. Signage is what it is. The blade sign is not part of the district, it's an individual landmark. So that's not so high on the list. I think it's just overall not fitting with a landmark building, which, as Mike pointed out, is stunning.
I don't disagree with that, but I do think it's a significant move in the right direction from what it looks like today. So I'm positive to it, but yes, there's enough information to have more.
But they're not free with a general.
Yeah.
So what would our motion be? Is it going?
We're not hearing you down at this end.
What would the, I guess, structure of the motion be here? Are we feeling?
Maybe this is kind of a question to the chair of office of the group, like, are there recommendations that we would have if we did a deny on that? Like, what would
That's what I'm
what
trying to
would our
get to, yeah.
recommendations be? Yeah,
Like, is this a full denial or denial on less or,
approved with condition.
yeah, I mean, how strongly are
I feel like it's a deny because with good conditions or unless it's usually something minor. This is an overall redesign, I think it's emotional. I don't think there's components of it that.
well, usually with the denial unless we would specify exactly what changes we would want, but I mean,
But our
it
job
sounds,
isn't to design it,
Yeah.
right?
yeah, that's maybe your job.
I guess maybe my question is like, looking at this, I'm like, oh, the granite will look a lot better in the middle. That sounds great. Like, we don't have a problem with the signage, so that's not gonna be in our list of recommendations. Or like, I guess personally, I'd be like, oh, the granite sounds good. The signage, it sounds like the committee is in favor of. What are the particular elements that we recommend they go back to the floor on?
I mean, it's hard to pick apart, to cherry pick what we like, what we don't like. I think sometimes we do that as a helpful means or suggestion of something minor, but it's like the application, usually the majority of the applications there, like 75% or greater.
I mean, we could also deny it, but like, for example, with the signage, not really criticize, like, we don't say the signage some spot, but yet still deny the overall application.
Yeah, that's my thought, I think, Carol.
I mean, typically what we would do in this case is stepping back and looking at it as if this were a new application coming to us and they were putting granite at this level, having the doors that Karen brought up with the Hercules, the budding glass and all of that. Typically, these aren't things that the committee would approve if this were their fresh application. If they were redoing that storefront. That's kind of my concern is, if I was seeing this for the first time, I would be kind of confused. It doesn't seem to belong to the landmark. So I don't have the camp look. I feel like it's full denial for so much with components that don't seem to really be an issue with the committee, like the signage.
You want to say?
I'm kind of just trying to wrap my brain around if we would, from the perspective of trying to be like a allegedly good partner with the community, I think my only concern around the denial is then what? Like, if it's not feasible for the applicant to do the things that we would like, then where are we left at
Yeah.
that point? And that's the only issue I have, actually.
One of the things that I'm also thinking about is, in this scenario where they're requesting legalization of windows, like what's going to happen, so. I guess that's also not necessarily something for us to be like concerned about.
Yeah, I don't think that's our concern. I think, what was your question?
If we deny, how do they move forward?
Oh,
Is
I
what
mean,
this would
that's
recommend.
just our job,
Basically, yeah.
is this design appropriate for this landmark? And our answer is yes or no with some caveats, but I don't, they go back and design something, I mean, ultimately LPC will say,
Yeah.
they'll go back and design something that is deemed appropriate. That's their mandate.
Literally, that's the drawing board.
Yeah.
I guess I agree with Paul. I don't know that I'm ready to deny the, I agree with what a couple folks have said, that it is an improvement upon what currently exists. There are parts of it that were poor. The things I'm interested in the things that other folks have pointed out, like the material of the door being accessible, and then window length. These sound like small things to me. Like I would probably be more in favor of a approve with conditions for the applicant to consider very specific issues that we have with it. Mostly because when I look at it, it's fine, but not the best that it could be. And if we don't have very specific recommendations for what we should do next, I feel uncomfortable giving them a denial without specific, recommendations.
I would just want to add, I feel like philosophically, applicant coming here should be moving toward the right answer, not further away or not at all. So wherever we land, denial, approve, I think it would be great if they are closer to a better solution than not at all.
Instructionally.
Yeah, right. So
So sort of to that point, and this was, we sort of discussed this briefly earlier, but like, what would we suggest?
Can I come out on
Yeah.
Sasha's point? So if this was a proposed design, and we would say, okay, don't have stick-on mullions and make a base and do all the things, then they would have an opportunity to make those improvements. If they don't, then it's built. You can't go make these minor changes, like you're saying, a whole series of minor changes because it's built. If you were in the design and it hasn't been fabricated and installed yet, then you have an opportunity. They can't make those adjustments.
Well, we could request, like, making an accessible door, right? Like, they can make those changes, right? Like, that is one thing we could suggest. Is there anything else that?
I mean, do we typically make recommendations? I mean, LPC has full guidelines on appropriate storefront. What, I don't recall ever making recommendations on recommendations.
Yeah, because that's not what we do.
Yeah.
We don't do that.
Yeah.
I mean, we're like frowned upon for doing that.
Yeah, like, for instance, if you said denial was the ADA, what kind of thing?
Yeah.
That's the problem. So it seems to me here, we're debating whether to deny unless or deny because. Those are the two distinctions. That maybe some of you guys are saying, we don't like to say deny. If you always say we're denying this because of X, Y. Whereas deny unless we're saying, we're gonna deny it unless you do X, Y, and Z, but that's moving more, in my judgment, into design sphere as opposed to making, a few adjustments or alterations to correct some issues. These seem like material issues. To define whether it's appropriate or not, I guess is what I'm saying. So I would say deny because of these material concerns we have. That would at least put them in the right direction.
I mean, it
Right,
would
right.
flag the issues to them,
Right.
so.
And the material concerns that we have are, I'm writing the list, I'm also typing.
Oh,
The Herculite doors, the material that the doors are being proposed to be made out of, the window length, the accessibility of the door, and the stick-on mullions.
Yes, but to be clear, accessibility to the door like this, it is an
That's not,
it's not really us.
It's more of a design, no.
It's an ADA, really. Like
it's a code requirement.
yeah, it's a code.
They may be getting around the code by saying they
Yeah.
have an accessible door on the side street, but this isn't.
We usually rely on representation, but like, it would be nice if they, but it's not something that like is a landmark issue.
And the fact that they're inconsistent, the two storefronts are inconsistent on Fifth Avenue and 30th Street, there's no continuity of the routes in the corner of the building.
It doesn't replicate some existing details that we would perhaps like to see done.
Well, I think we have an advantage that there's plenty of historical photos here.
Yeah.
Pretty clear blueprint
Yeah,
of what the building was, and we've seen quite a few applications even this year. You had one, John, in Madison, where some storefronts that were redone recently, and we've seen some applicants come and really kind of wow us, and maybe materials aren't, you know, like the solid bronze that they used to use, or, you know, the cast iron components or whatnot, but visually, you know, as far as colors and the majority of materials and whatnot, I mean, it takes us back to what was intended by the original architects, you know, what was meant to be on that landmark. So the blueprint is there. I think if this were a brand new application, we would say this is really far from anything that's ever been present on the building in its history. You know, even though the transoms, it didn't sound like they were original, but they go back and to an era when they would have been common on buildings like that. That's something we could, I'm sure, be fine with. But the existing stuff and then the proposed stuff really isn't appropriate at all based on what we know about the history. It's there black and white.
So, how do people feel about a motion that incorporates all of that? Would we deny the codes? Yeah, it's just a denial, but we would specify everything. Sure. Does the whole want to make a motion?
Motion to deny.
Okay.
Second.
All right. Take it with that. Mark? Say yes. Yes. John? Yes. Michael?
Yeah.
Neil?
Yes.
David? I see it.
Yes. Yes.
Gotcha. Justine?
Yeah.
Lona?
Yes.
yeah.
Gary? Tony?
Yes.
And Law?
Yes.
Thank you, yes. Thank you. All right. So our next and final applicant is, it's 7. Oh, the Plaza Hotel, I've heard of it.
Yeah.
Okay.
It didn't have the minute.
Okay, sounds good.
Ron.
This is regarding canopy and lobby.
Gabrielle wanted to join us.
Right.
Well, they're getting ready. My name is Mick Doyle from Atchison Doyle Partners. We're the architects for the residential condominium of the Plaza Hotel, which is responsible for the Central Park South entry and the designated interior of the lobby. And just historically, just to give you some background, in 2006, the city planning and landmarks had a memo of understanding, MOU with the Plaza Hotel, which granted them some changes in occupancy and C of O. And at the time, 11 spaces on the interior were designated landmarks. The one that we're going to show tonight of the interior, the block and lot of the residential condominium, which is 181 units facing the Central Park South. And the canopy are part of their responsibility, not the rest of the building. So they were responsible for the upkeep of it and the financial support of it. And we're very proud of the fact that of those 11 spaces, this is the only one that's fully compliant with the original MOU from 2006. Landmark has 2 or 3 really great staff people who've been on this for quite a while and are intricately involved. And this particular project started just before COVID, and things got slowed down. So what we're going to present tonight is that interior and the canopy. And if I can just point out, technically this is all restorative work, and 95% of it would have been staff level approval. But because we're changing something on the original front desk and changing the vestibule on the interior, it becomes a commission hearing, and that's why we're in front of you, and we're happy to be here. I will not, unless you have questions, I'll try to keep our team, Elliot Consenbazis, my associate, and Gabby Porter, who have worked diligently on this project and are really on top of it. I won't go into the super technical detail unless you have questions, and keep you moving, but please. Why don't we go with this? The building was built in 1905 to 1907. Henry Hardenberg did the Dakota. It's an incredible individual landmark. It's owned by the majority of the hotel. The other spaces are owned by the Katara, which is the Qatari royal family, I guess, and they control the majority of the work on the exterior. There's a lot of photographic evidence of the different eras of it. The whole portion to the left was an addition with Warren and Wetmore, which was like 20 years, not 20, 10 years later, and it was built to match the original. So there is this confusing 2 entries to the building, but now the original entry is turned into the residential condo, and what you see on the 5th Avenue side is the main entry. Next. Another good shot. We're talking about that area in red down on the right, and we uncovered through some real sleuthing an incredible number of original photographs, and I think using the expression blueprint, or while we didn't have original drawings, we have an enormous amount of really great detailed drawings. So we're very happy with that. The New York Historical Society is an incredible resource, and we convinced our client to give to them to keep us able to go rummage through their files. This is on the top is 59th Street. The tan area is the entry to the building. That green area, through successive changes, and as one member of the Landmarks Commission said, how did we ever let this happen? Where they took the central entry and filled it in with the mailroom, and there's success. And I won't blame anyone, but there was Trump, there was Elad, and it settled down, and we're at a point now which I think we're going to do some good work. The area of this area right here is the original front desk. You've seen it in movies like North by Northwest. You've seen Donald Trump in Home Alone. It's been filmed, and again, a lot of photographic evidence. Continue. Building exterior. Again, the original canopy was a covered glass canopy, and which has gotten changed, and as were the 2 side sort of semicircular entries, one to the oak room and one to the what used to be Trader Vic's and then became the food court, which never quite fully took off. And is closed right now. As is the Oak Room, just used for special events. That's a designated area, by the way. This is a really great shot that shows a lot of the detailing we were talking about. We're going to see some more in a moment. This is 1911. Continue, please. As you can see, we're getting up closer. The cast iron has been painted so many times, it's like a bad wedding cake. You can't see any more detail. It's just emulsified paint. It's really disturbing, but you know, and it's like gold lame. It's really hideous. We're excited about being able to totally strip that. And we have enough detailing where pieces are missing. We have enough detail for replication. What we don't have are those light fixtures, but through a lot of, we've been talking to a lot of fixture manufacturers, and we are able to do the 3D modeling that I think we'll be able to bring those back. You can see the stonework in the center panel. You're going to see in a second what it is now. Is totally covered, and it almost looks like a plywood or sheetrock signage of the Plaza Hotel. And that was the main entry, and the two revolving doors were on the side. Now there's this weird sense of, do I go in right, do I go in left? We're going to try to clean that up next. Tell me if I'm going too fast, but I'm trying to keep moving. These are some great historical shots again that show the historic glass canopy, the bronze lantern. It's a funeral, but you can see the detailing, which you don't really pick up now, which is going to be brought back. Next. This is actually good to point out. You see that that classic New York thing where the wire mesh is on top of the glass on the upper. We're not going to have to do that because of the glass technology now. So while this is totally restorative, I don't think we want to bring that back. I think we'll be happy without it.
Move the voice thing, see the boxes of that. Or, you know, I'd move it
Yeah.
up, top right.
Okay.
I don't know.
Thank you. Again, you can see pretty good detailing of that. We have these photographs which are valuable for this. Next, again, a great shot. There's really the tenant owners in the condominium are very house proud now, and they're also, if I can be candid, they're pretty driven about financially. They want to make sure the value of their places stay good. So we've been able to convince them that this is a really good effort. And they're totally behind it. Next. Again, the glass is, I think, will be a big improvement. It's had the sidewalk bridge around the building for quite a while, which is going to be dealt with. But the light and that sense of darkness coming down the street will be very different, I think. It's a well-traveled street. Again, you can see that in this photo, which is 1946, they've already gotten rid of the glass and put in, that molding is original, but they put in a metallic panel, and that's what's there now, painted. It's very shabby. It's sort of falling apart, just as in having ourselves on the back and our team. We're also the architects of the Sheraton Edelin Hotel, which we've been doing for 30 years, and the Metropolitan Club, and we were involved with when Steve Jobs did the first glass cube. We were the architect of records, actually working with Gensler on that. Next. Just Martin Landau, thanks for the hearings. Gabby found this photograph, but more important was to see that, because that's one of the things that I described as sort of a wedding cake that's been so disturbingly painted, like they never scraped it or just. So I think we'll be able to really make this stuff sing. Oh, and look, go back, that center panel, this is pre-landmarks, where they had filled in the panel, with a storefront and put in like a flower shop at the time. But then, which we'll see when we get to the interior. But, again, there was still that sense of the main entry. Next. Again, detail shots that, Gabby and, Elias had found. Next. Let's sort of wrap up on the exterior, and I'm gonna ask Elias to come into the interior because he's very familiar with it. You can see what the existing condition is now, that glass panel. It's, again, that is the original main entrance. You can see how the painting of and the detailing has gotten a little bit, on the way. The good news is with the movement of the horseback, the horse carriages, the pigeon issue has diminished significantly. That was a major, major concern. We are going to do pretty sophisticated pigeon control, which we've done with Metropolitan Club and Sherry, and we've been working on that. It sounds really mundane, but it's an important part of the architecture. You can see the things that were added over the years. There were no railings in the very beginning, and you know, when we were looking at the lake during the Martin Landau photograph, that's what I was talking about, the painting. Next. These are sort of details that are, you know, again, we have really detailed this. It's going out to bid to 3 really qualified groups of people who know what they're doing on this work. One of them who worked on the restoration of the canopy, which is a lot lower level on DA Street. Next. The tile work is we're going to be able to deal with as bird spikes, and a lot of that will be moved. The electrical went wild on the inside of that area. That's got to be carefully removed. We've had a lot of experience at the Metropolitan Club across the street where they did some really bad conduit stuff over the years, which we've been able to remove, and through what's the name? Paint relief.
That's Opus, Michelle Gordon.
And we've been able to doctor this up with not painting the stone completely, but working on some of these penetrations without replacing the whole stone. It's very restorative. That's my word for today. Next. Again, these are what is uncovered in the interstitial space above that mailroom. So we have a lot of good detail to work off of. Next. It's a side-by-side, the current entry and the proposed entry. You can see the exterior had wooden doors, and we would be looking to replace those exactly as the original were. They have full-time doormen, 2 doormen, but they will be accessible with automatic opening. Fully accessible. I find at the doors, the accessible entry is actually designed quite a while ago before our involvement. Over to the right, there's a lift into the building. Next. This is a closer version of the restored entry. And you can see, I think we would try to get rid of the carpeting, cleaning the stone, and
I said, oh, thank God.
yeah, that's one of those, when I see them being replaced, no. I'm over caffeinated now. I had a few espressos before the thing, so I'll get emotional. Next. great. These get into the technical drawings. I'm glad to go through them, but I don't think you need to see those as you said, Tony, the blueprint of the photographs is what is happening. But we do have the technical expertise to do all this, this work. Why don't we go through that and get to the interior? So the demolition is very controlled. It's not expansive. It's like little pieces and restorative. Just, why don't you comment on the proportion?
Sure, yeah, this is just us, showing that we did a study of the proportions of the original photos to make sure that the paneling of the proposed door matches what was there historically. And you can see from our proposed drawing below that we're maintaining that alignment with the revolving doors and the secondary glass panels in the center window. This is just some more detail on the scope of work, but essentially we're removing the non-historic metal paneling and the non-historic light framed enclosure, and we're replacing everything with a glass top canopy with a brass or a bronze coppered ceiling that will match the profiles of the original, and we do have some profiles that have been maintained that we will be surveying in the field. This is just a section view to see, you know, all the things that we're removing to do a full cleanup.
That's the mail room that comes all the way out to the street. Most prime real estate in New York is mail room, important.
And one of the main things that we're trying to do with this is open up this central view, right? The center axis of this facade and the view into the lobby from the center door. So we're removing all of that infill and we're bringing back, you know, very open glass doors. And we're introducing a vestibule for a number of reasons. Climate control is one, but the other reason is that there is an elevator bank in this lobby. And when the elevators go up and down, they create a draft in the space. So if you were to only have single doors open to the exterior, it would really push and pull the air in and out of the building, which would create, you know, climate control and air quality issues, which we're avoiding by introducing the vestibule. And you can see the profiles of the canopy that we're also bringing back, and then creating the lines.
Move to the lobby.
Here's some pretty pictures, and let's talk about the interior.
Now, again, this is a designated space, and that's why in front of you, and Elias will explain, but that original front desk, we're making a modification. And you can see there's no vestibule on the inside, and the vestibule, the deputy director, Bernadette Artis, was like, oh, we can approve all of this at staff, and then she said, oh, wait a minute. And they talked it through and said, that's what we do. That's
yeah, you can see these were the original front doors, and we have some historic evidence that by 1911 they were already putting up temporary barriers outside to address probably some of the draft issues that you would get from this type of entry. This is the original front desk. This lobby has been significantly modified since then. It's you know, partitions have been built above here. And this was originally an L-shaped desk that opened to another part of the building. It's now been kind of enclosed and had a ceiling drawn above. And you can see, even by 1946, right, the original front doors were removed. They were replaced with a storefront, which seems to be a flower shop. And we're assuming that 1970s photo of the exterior was part of the same condition. And what we do have from the original 1907 photos are some pretty close-up shots of the door hardware, which we're going to bring back and try to replicate in time. Just to quickly go through some of the existing conditions. As you can see, since the nineteen forties, this mailroom was constructed and there was a stone and glass infill built within the original door opening. And then there was also the addition of this new front desk.
Which was put on top of that mosaic tile, so we're going to be able to restore the mosaic tile. And, which we've done already to a significant part of the lobby with landmarks approval.
And you can see the, what was formerly the front desk, you can see the L-shaped portion continues, is now closed off to, the hotel portion of the building. The ceiling has been dropped and, faux stone panels have been, added behind them. So these are the areas where, we're talking about. And these are just some shots of, you know, the mailroom that was constructed, non-historic stone threshold, and just some details of the, faux painted stone panels in the existing desk that were proposed to remove. We've done a series of probes in the lobby, and we found that under the unoriginal desk, the mosaic floors are remaining, and we can restore those. Behind the mailroom, you can still see the stone base and detailing of the door trim, the carved stone door trim, which remains and will be restored. And the interior original marble trim is also in very good shape. And we're looking to keep and restore all of those elements. Get into the proposed work. You can see we're proposing to remove the desk and the non-historic infill, and build a vestibule, which will be a wooden vestibule with interior bronze doors to match the materiality of the two revolving doors, which are original. And the exterior doors will be fully wood to match what was originally the view from the street. It's just a blow up of that. And at the desk, what we are proposing to do is do a selective removal at the seams of the existing marble paneling, and to reuse that paneling to turn the corner and build the size of the desk. We've done this successfully at 1 Henson Place, which is also an interior landmark, and we would use the same strategy here. The idea is to give the the employees access to the desk and also maintain the symmetry of this space, which is why we're introducing 2 openings. It's just a larger view of that. And here's some more technical drawings, but essentially we're demolishing non-historic partitions and desks. And we're introducing a new vestibule and a modified front desk, and we're relocating the mail and packet room behind the original front desk. This is just another view of what's being removed and what's being proposed. Once again, we're being very careful to align the proportions of the new door with what was the historic alignment with the revolving doors. And here's just a bit more detail on the section. This drop ceiling at the above the vestibule will house all of the electrical and HVAC equipment required, and we don't anticipate having to go into the floor, which we will restore the mosaic flooring on the ground. This is a proposed view of that, and just lighting and ventilation on the ceiling. And these are just some detailed drawings of the desk. This is showing exactly what pieces are going to be very carefully removed and reapplied to the sides of the desk. And we're also proposing a slight raise in the height, which we will carefully remove the top, do a small infill matching the profiles and the stone type, and then reinstall the top at a more appropriate height. Just a quick summary of the kind of three components of the project. This is the existing and proposed desk. New entry from the interior. And the new entry from the exterior and canopy restoration. As you can see, we're doing everything we can to bring it back to the historic detailing that we have, very good archival evidence of.
And then just one last comment, the Landmarks Conservancy has the control of the facade easement. And they were brought in day one, and they're fully supportive of it and are willing to state that to the Landmarks Commission. They've been actually attending all the meetings we've had with Landmarks. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much for that detailed presentation. Do we have any questions?
We start, like you mentioned, the facade easement. Can you tell a little bit more about that? I'm not familiar.
The, in throughout the country, you can, a not-for-profit can take over the facade easement and have the right to control it. So that any work that has to be done on the exterior of this building has to be approved by the Landmarks Conservancy, because that was given for monetary, for tax reasons by a law to the Landmarks Conservancy. So, Ed Green and her staff actually have a lot to say over it. For instance, when we were working on the penthouse, just to give you an example, for an individual client, and we were trying to modify something, it came up and they were against it and stated, oh, we didn't like the fold of something, and they really do exert control.
Not very common, is it?
It's getting more common. You're going to see a lot more.
It's a great way to protect the landmark.
Yeah.
The original bronze light fixtures that are hanging from the canopy,
Yep.
that you're going to be recreating, are those bronze? The new ones?
Yes,
They'll be bronze as well?
yes.
The lamp posts, you should, I think currently they're goldish.
Yeah.
When you clean them, and I can't tell in that picture, are they staying gold or are they going back to black?
They're going back to the original, which is black with accented, the plaza emblem.
Yeah, okay. And
They're
then,
going to be totally stripped, and we're doing paint. Landmarks is asking for paint analysis, so I shouldn't be so glib. It's going to be the original. But,
I know now there are, and I didn't see it in here at all, some really big heaters on the underside. What are you doing with those?
We're working with a mechanical engineer now to try to diminish those. This is an issue at the Sharon Evelyn and the Metropolitan Club the same. There's a whole new line of very thin pieces, because the ones that are now cast like a really weird yellow glow in the evening. You see it in front of many buildings. So that's a work in progress, but it's a concern.
The ones that are there now, because I remember the Plaza campus
Those
like
are,
5, 6, 7, 8 years ago.
they're gone. They're going to be gone.
Okay, so those were those replaced like at that time, like 8 years ago, whatever
They've
it was?
been replaced.
Okay, so those are what the newer version
Yeah,
is supposed to be.
still not very sad. There's a whole new.
Yeah.
Which aren't so, babbling a little bit, that aren't so yellow and weird. They're infrared.
Thanks.
Good question.
Yeah, so impressed with the design and presentation. Thank you. A couple questions. You mentioned the energy, the heaters. Is the plaza energy exempt from the energy code?
Yes.
So the fact that you're putting the vestibule in, those that we don't know, as part of climate action and sustainability, most buildings are required, or all buildings are required now to have a vestibule. So it's good to see them doing that, even though they are exempt from complying with the energy code. All landmarks are able to be exempt if they comply. So, I was curious about that vestibule. You're not doing it necessarily because you have to for code, it's for climate.
Correct. It's for the
The
comfort
benefit
of
of
the
your
lobby.
users not getting drafts and wind and all of that.
Unlike the hotel lobby, which is more of a public space, this is, you'd be stopped by the doorman. But we like the idea that you can see into it, but some of the tenant owners tend to sit in the lobby. It's when even the revolving doors, the chimney effect on the elevators is really dramatic. It's,
So this will improve that. Will it also, is it also for security reasons?
Yeah.
And
Very,
was the
very much
vestibule-
so.
Was there a double, was the vestibule original, the double doors, or there was only one originally?
It was originally a single layer of double doors, right? So there was no vestibule.
No vestibule, but there were two pairs of doors side by side.
There was a single pair of doors centered. Right,
Okay.
I can show that.
So that's gonna be the same, but you're just
Right,
adding a second set of doors. Okay. Okay. The floor finishes, it's wonderful that you're restoring all that beautiful terrazzo flooring. Wondering what floor finish will go behind the desk, because that's visible now that the desk isn't as long and continuous. You can see behind it. It almost looks like plain concrete.
Yes,
Probably don't like architects on the end point, because when we were looking at our presentation last night, it looked, what we were, I looked at it and said, oh, that looks like an industrial carpet, and it's probably going to be a carpet because the men and women stand, the door people stand there all day, but it's going to be more appropriate, and there's not the tile right now underneath that.
Right. I wondered if the tile, where visible, should go back, and then where you
Put a
don't
carpet.
see is carpet, or they stand on, foam pads.
That's what,
yeah. What we were discussing.
that's what this gentleman was proposing last night.
Yeah. I mean, maybe for the benefit of everybody else on the committee, you could just show that slide.
Sure.
About what I'm talking
Sure.
about.
Show the one that,
Yeah, our deck
Yeah.
is paved,
you see that floor?
yeah, looks great.
That-
You zoom in,
Yep.
so the tile just stopped after the red threshold. So it looks like plain concrete back there. But so wondering if, was it originally, what was it originally back there?
We don't have a view of what was originally
Because
back
the
there.
desk went fully across.
Oh,
It doesn't, it was not tiled, but we don't know what was there.
Okay. And then the same question, what would the flooring of the vestibule be?
Mosaic.
That
Mosaic
was,
tile.
that was mosaic tile. And we have pieces of it that are there, so we're going to be able to do that.
Thank you.
Just interesting factoid, Barbara Cohn from Miller Grove,
Yeah, I have a
done-
I don't know.
she knows,
brilliant.
she practically picks up pieces of marble, bites it and tells you where it's from in Italy or France. She is maniacally involved with the restoration of the mosaic thing. She's
That's a great resource.
just been an incredible mind-boggling.
So we completed a full restoration of the lobby, and that was approved at staff level, in November. And we, did a significant number of stone Dutchman replacements that was a yellow sienna marble, on the floor, and also, mosaic, replacement. So we know what's there. We probed the floor underneath the mailroom, and we've seen that, there was a leveler poured over it, so we know there's gonna be some damage, but we're confident we have a very good match, and we have, huge replacement that we've already done.
Not terribly related. First of all, congratulations. I live in this neighborhood. I walk by here almost every day, so this is just so wonderful to see with such specificity and care. How will this inform the other entrances? If you don't mind my asking,
I'll be really candid, I know. Some of you know
because
me.
there's some
I
problems.
don't hold back. Because of the ownership,
Yes,
the Qataris feel that they answer to Donald Trump and world. They are so impressed with what's going on in the residential lobby. I think you're going to see some other presentations because their plan is to redo the hotel. And the exterior is budgeted at about $60 million, and it's going to happen. It's the final bids are getting in place now, and the interior, they plan on that a year and a half, 2 years from now. I'm shutting down for a part-time, but they have,
this may be phases.
yeah, but they
Okay.
have to bring it to full compliance, and they are looking at this with incredible detail,
Great.
the architects.
they could use it.
Yep.
Right here.
And we have access to them. We can't tell them what to do, but because we were involved with the exterior and we were here, and we were getting permission about the 15th floor balconies. So they know the quality of the work and they're starting to see the light, so to speak. I think you'll be seeing some presentations for a couple of years.
Great.
I have kind of a question along those lines too. So the east minor entrance of this Central Park south side, that goes to that basement area that is public space and sort of was the only now public space in this landmark building, right? It was kind of the only way that the real actual public could visit the building. Is there any discussion of rejuvenating that in any of this that you've
They're trying.
heard of?
They're actively, and as in the Oak Park and
And the basement space even, because I think, like, when we think of it, obviously not necessarily from a landmarks perspective, but from a community board perspective, the public having access to the plaza is wonderful, but right now you can't get in the hotel entrance or, of course, the private entrance as a member of the public, even to see any of it. So hopefully that will be part of that, and now it'll have a nice canopy over it.
the hotel is fairly open. The downstairs, the food court was the most open. You're absolutely right. But I think if they find a new tenant, that would, but that's another condominium part of it.
Any other questions? At Henry Hardenbaugh.
Yes.
Wow. Singer Building, the Con Ed Building, the Plaza Hotel, the Western Union Building on 23rd Street,
And what's the one at
the Dakota Hotel. I mean, this guy was prolific. So with that introduction, I have a bunch of questions.
Yes.
So just so I should understand, so we got one building with a hotel on Fifth Avenue entrance, and on the south of Central Park entrance, there's 181 condo units
Yep.
owned by the individual owners who own not that guy who you're talking about, that Arab, is he an Arabian
No.
guy?
Well, it's,
So they own this, he owns that.
yes.
They own this and he.
And the condominium individual owners on that, but the controlling votes on the building, overall building, are the larger portion.
Okay, just so I understand that. And do you happen to have a picture of the
We have pictures.
the double, triple paint jobs on this stuff to show how mushy it is, how obliterated it is, how negative it is, just out of curiosity, how that is? While you're looking, did the owners live there? They just invest in it and then they use it as a place to park money?
Surprisingly, a lot of people live there, and a lot of young people, a lot of kids.
Oh, daughters and sons of the elite.
You hear about, like, Tommy Hilfiger lived there and sold his place. Steve Wynn owned
I
it.
went to his apartment.
You know, excuse me.
I went to a couple of apartments.
Oh.
Wow. Okay, now how come, here we go, this is what I wanted to see. Wow, I see what you mean. So you're gonna strip all of that,
Totally.
how do you do it, with chemicals or water, hot water?
Mixture of non-invasive chemicals, not.
Okay, and pressure probably.
Yeah, well, the poultice, you put something on and it sits for a while.
And then they yank it off, kind of.
Chemicals.
Why does the Copacabana in my brain keep playing that music when you talk about the Metropolitan Club?
Well, that's Trader Vic's is downstairs, which is like the Copa, which used to be across from the Metropolitan.
Right? Yeah,
Over
I
by
thought
the
so.
Sharon Netherland and the.
I was there, 64, I think. Okay, more. Oh, is there gonna be an assessment to those 161 apartments?
You bet you're,
And they're paying for this?
Yeah.
And they
it's,
probably voted on to do it, right?
yes, yes.
And they wanted to, so they got plenty of moolah. Okay.
Can
I'm almost
can
done.
you- But the reason that they're doing it is because this dedicated architectural team convinces them that this is what's gonna improve their
Now,
value.
he convinced them, or he convinced the ownership of the entire structure to convince them kind of thing.
Well, they control their space and they have to pay for it.
So, so that's the assessment.
Yep.
ADA, well, I wrote ADA ramp, ADA for some reason. Is there ADA somewhere gonna be here?
ADA is that's an ADA entry. When you go in there, there's a lift that takes you up to the level and gets you all the way through. I'll be the first to admit what, Karen Pedrazi brought up, the hotel entrance on the east side is maniacally really rough to get into.
Yeah,
It's very difficult. I mean, whether you're a kid, whether you're old, I never came from a rugby playing, but it's a disaster. And it's a really tricky, I've been pondering, is there a way that, you know, without doing the side entrance and the back entrance, because I'm a great believer in it should be the main entrance, but it's a tricky thing, and we're trying to work out some solutions.
Maybe get rid of city bike and the pedicabs, that would help.
Excuse me?
Get rid of the city bike and the pedicabs
Yeah.
that are parked in front would be a
Yeah.
huge help. The hotel and to community work five.
They're not within our jurisdiction.
I'm just saying,
I think,
if everyone's talking here, I'm talking.
I'm sorry, Chairman.
Any other questions? Okay, is there anyone from the public to speak?
Maybe Firefly's AI note taker Maggie has a question.
Okay, so now we'll open it up to comments on the business session here. What do people think about these changes? I know, Tony, for the last applicant, you said it's really great when applicants come to us with restorative projects. Looks like one. Nice to see, right? Yeah. You know, I'm blown away by the overall project, you know, to have somebody, or a lot of somebody's go to the trouble looking at historical photos, what would have been, what should have been, that kind of thing. They really paid attention to every single detail here. It's really, really impressive. Yeah. Does anyone have any issues with the application? Nope. Okay.
I hope you film it. You film your documentary of it or something. It's,
What's
actually
the
would be
time
cool.
limit of this thing?
or I'll do it. It's really.
We hope to begin the interior right away and the exterior, even though there's a sidewalk bridge up, the sidewalk bridge is high enough that we can do the selective demolition. Even the demolition is going to be an improvement of what's there now.
Yeah.
The removal, demolition is a bad word. The removal of all that extraneous stuff while it's being restored is going to be a better look and a better feel to the public for a 18-month period that this is happening.
And you're predicting that not only will this work be done, but there's thought about further improvement on the building after this.
I think this is going to be, again, the beginning, because they have no choice. The MOU is an enforced
MOU?
the memo of understanding, which was the 2006 approval. This was city planning and landmarks when they gave the approval. I don't want to bore you with the details, but this is more prevalent. You'll see a lot of it in the City of Yes, things that are coming up where landmarks and city planning agree on something and it becomes force of law. It's that they have to do it. And so they're obligated, just they haven't gotten to it.
Okay. Any other comments about the application? Sounds like everyone's on board. Yeah. Fair motion. Motion to approve it. Second. Take it to that.
Yeah.
Michael?
Yes.
Neil?
Yes.
David?
Yes. Yes.
I said.
Yeah.
Zona?
Yes.
Yeah.
Jordan? Yes. And more.
Yes.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you, CV5. You're grateful, it's very interesting.
Interesting good or interesting bad?
Maybe Suzanne will be checking on it.
I'm gonna be filming it.
I know,
I think you should.
we'll,
I think it's
bring it up.
fascinating.
We did the interior, a lot of pictures of.
We have
Such a
one
great
final.
documentary. I mean, we've lost so much in the West 50s and East 50s.
Yeah.
So it's so refreshing to see something being restored rather than torn down, so.
No, and it's, I don't want to get soupy about it, but the tenant owners are really rallying around this. It's so interesting to them. I think they're gonna feel a lot of ownership and as architects, that's what you want. You don't,
Nobody thinks about money.
you just want
That's the best.
Yeah, yeah.
just want to make them feel that they're doing it and they're coming up with the ideas.
Great.
Let's do it, that's okay.
All their idea.
Thank you again.
Thank you.
Last time on the agenda is an internal item, so it is the MSMX, Midtown South rezoning plan.
You might remember that from, David Sigmund's presentation.
A little louder with that,
Oh, right. So this was discussed at the, prior full board meeting. David Sigmund gave a very lengthy presentation, about that.
Yes. And the board obviously approved it. Now we have to go through something called a POA, Points of Agreement. And despite the name, basically Points of Agreement is a long list of things we can ask for. So it's gonna be all the committees are going through this and doing this exact same thing. And it's gonna create one master document. But what we need to do is, for landmarks, come up with the things that we want to ask for, vote on them, and create one resolution from landmarks to add to this larger CD5 document. To that end, we have 4 things to vote on. We can vote on them as a group, but I think it's a little bit fairer to vote on them individually, given that they're all very different. The 4 proposals are, one was the one I emailed around from Julie. If you all got a chance to read it. So within the Midtown South rezoning plan, they identified 95 buildings within the 4th quadrant that are either eligible or have achieved status as state national registry or New York City landmark.
say that again, they're either,
State national registry or New York City landmark.
Like the
So
sort of
those
buildings,
are the 2 potential designations, state national, New York City.
and it's a historic, Tacoma district, historic district? I never heard of that, by the way.
Well,
I
those
worked there
are,
for 60 years.
these are the individual buildings.
Yeah, I know,
So
I
95 buildings, yep. Of the 95, 34 are New York City designated landmarks. 30 of the 95 are LPC eligible in the 4 quadrants. The proposal was to ask LPC to make sure that they fully reviewed all 30 of those LPC eligible buildings, within the 4 quadrants. And Satya, I know you're gonna talk about this. We'll get to that. It's gonna go over quickly. The second one, was a request, from Neil, to have funding related to the Flower District, which is interesting. And then 2 from Brad, our esteemed chair. One was for funding for inspections and enforcement by LPC to ensure compliance with landmark law. And then 2 was funding for a study to determine the value market of landmarks following the passage to ensure that landmarks are able to properly leverage their development rights. So those are the 4. So 1, asking LPC to review the 30 sites. 2, funding for the Flower District. 3, funding for inspections to ensure compliance with landmark law. And 4, funding for a study to ensure that proper market values are being realized.
And is everyone familiar with the concept of development rights?
everyone's familiar with,
The concept of development rights and everything?
Could you just briefly touch that concept of that?
Well, I was gonna let you.
I might be, but I'm not sure.
I mean, I think with development rights, isn't there like the air rights?
Right, so
Or is
there
it
are,
more
it's
comprehensive?
like selling your ability to. build
Yeah, it's
on that.
usually the ability to transfer, the ability to build above your landmark building to another developer.
Yeah.
So that's
You're
how
right, you're right.
hotels or- Yeah,
The way.
yeah.
Is there a way that do we have a copy of these four proposals that you can email to the group?
Yeah, it's not pretty, but,
That would help.
Thank you.
Did you send four, number four?
no.
Okay.
So I sent one
Okay, yeah.
and the other three were received today.
Oh, okay.
You mean the
Hence the lack of
community, the
email.
one from 12?
I'm
Community
sorry.
Board 12, Community District 12, Community Board 12, that one you mean?
Yeah, so, the one that I sent, and it has the
Right.
proposal from Julie.
Which was circulated like a few days ago.
Correct. The other ones,
Payment
was the,
today.
I thought that was just an example of what we're doing from another.
There was an example,
Oh, okay.
but then there was also this like giant, I'm not sure if it was sent to everyone, there was a
I don't
spreadsheet.
think-
yeah.
That was
I
from
think I only
today?
saw the example.
That was a few days ago, but
Yeah.
there was a giant spreadsheet that Julie had compiled with suggestions for all of the CD5 committee.
Yeah.
And so this is.
There's lots of materials. I'm trying to just dumb it down to its essence. So, what we need to do as a committee is to discuss and debate and vote on each of the four things. So the first one is of the proposal from Julie is 95 buildings have been identified by people. Of those 95, 30 are LPC eligible or are landmark eligible, but are not landmark deemed. Julie's proposal is to ask that LPC do a full review of those 30 buildings that are eligible and ensure that they don't qualify before they get renovated, demolished, whatever.
Further change.
I'm sorry, can you tell me who is Julie?
Julie Chu,
Julie Chu.
She's a community board member.
Okay.
Yeah, she's, sorry. who
I
works
was just
for the-
wondering if these 95 buildings, so the four zones that they're rezoning, right, there's four separate quadrants.
Yep.
And two of them, are landmark, historic districts.
And two of them what?
Two of them are in our committee's historic districts, Madison Square North Historic District and Ladies Mile Historic District, right? The four areas that are being rezoned, two of them encompass two of our historic districts. Are the 95 buildings in those two historic districts? Or are they throughout all?
Throughout the quadrants.
I think it's more instructive to talk about the 30, because the 95 already includes some LPC designated buildings, and those clearly have to go through LPC no matter what. Like, this rezoning is gonna happen, or like, if this rezoning happens, then LPC still has final say on anything that's already LPC designated. It's the 30 that we should really be.
So are those 30 peppered throughout the four
Yes.
zones? Okay.
I think they're mostly in the garment district.
How
According to
many
this
buildings
list.
are there in the four zones? Like if there's like 95 that are up for this thing, how many are there in total?
Total number of buildings?
Yeah, they're like thousands.
I think it's like over 40 blocks, right? 42
Yeah.
blocks. 42 blocks.
What are, what block to what block? What area are we talking about here? Okay, I didn't see this, sorry, it was in.
Oh, you have it?
I did.
Yeah, right there.
Give it to Tony.
Yeah, I just got it from Johnny. Okay, thank you. Perfect.
Do y'all wanna do questions on each and then?
Yeah.
And then
So,
Yeah, I guess we'll just go through questions first on all of them.
Before we jump into that question,
Don't whisper.
were we to come up with our own too, or, I mean, that's up to us, but besides these four, are we being charged with, hey, as a landmarks committee, what do we want, right? I know you wrote that, you know, but we need a lot of time to.
yeah,
Yeah, think about it, but like as a group, shouldn't we, I mean, it's great to weigh in on the others, we need to do that, but
yeah.
what do we want to do?
Right, or
As a guide?
recommendations.
Yeah,
Can I make a?
We're the experts in the community board of that.
Can I make a general type statement for a moment? I had a tour today in the garment district, and that's why I asked you to send me the list of the addresses. So I went and I looked at them. And even I looked at that pictures that Julie made, she's terrific. But looking at them in real life is a lot more definitive. And then after looking at them and looking at the notes, I went up to the bid. And Barbara wasn't available. I spoke to Jerry Scuff up there. You know, Jerry, he's the second in command at the bid. And I said to him, this is great. Look at all of this stuff. Here they're taking a small 4,000 square foot a building, and they're going to turn it into a 75,000 square foot of residential with 76 units, 23 affordable, and retail, and so and so. And each one of these little 3,000 square foot, 4,000, 5,000 is turning into 100,000 presumed residential, some of which are going to be at market. Isn't that great?
Yeah.
I said to Jerry Scuff, and he said, what are you talking about? The owners have to agree on it. The owners have to agree on it. Oh, great. How many of them have agreed on it? He didn't even know if they knew about this. So what we're looking at here is rezoning projected and potential development sites. Don't drive yourself nuts here, because if this happened, I'm gonna be long dead. Okay, long dead if any of this happened. So keep it in perspective and go on. And can I ask who you are?
Me?
Yeah.
Never public.
Hi. Thanks for coming.
I've been on one of your tours before.
Yeah? Oh, don't tell anybody. No. Is it terrible?
That was good.
Okay. Good, good. You said good. Write it down. Okay.
Great testimonial.
I brought him in here.
So I guess we'll go through them one by one. And so the first one we've been talking about with the all the different sites. Aren't any questions about it?
Where did they come from, the 30 sites?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who voted on these? Who's selected?
So they identified 95 buildings.
If you go there and look at these buildings, you would agree with them.
I can't hear you because
DCP. So when they put together the rezoning, they have an environmental report, and the environmental report includes all of the buildings that are landmarked for state or historic, or state or nationally deemed, as well as locally deemed. The DCP put together the list.
Right, so for the 30 though, I guess the question I have, for the 30, when it says they are eligible, are they talking this factually, meaning it's over a certain age? Or are they adding additional, more subjective, criteria about this, to get to that 30?
Yeah.
So the landmark law says,
I
you
don't.
have to be a certain age. So are they looking at all buildings of a certain age, or are they saying that it has these additional features, historic, cultural?
Yeah,
whatever features?
I'm not sure. I'm thinking it's probably an objective determinant, if that would make sense.
Yeah.
Just meeting some bare threshold requirements, because if they already analyzed the subjective stuff, then they could have already ruled on whether or not it's.
Right, so
I like
then my
that.
question is, what are those objectives?
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
the question I have on my mind.
Yeah.
Other than, the only one I can think of is the age of the building.
Yeah, I mean, I would think really any old
What is
building is
the
like
age?
eligible.
Well, to be landmarked, you have to. the
Right,
building
but what
has-
is that?
I think it's what, 40?
50.
50.
Yeah.
So there would be more than 95 buildings in this region that are,
It's
More than
possible that they were
50.
like renovated though, so it's not like original.
Let's see, that's
I
the
think the
question.
answer is we don't know what.
We don't
Yeah.
know.
we don't,
Yeah.
I mean, it's like,
architectural significance, cultural
Yeah, but
significance.
then-
We don't know
but that
what
gets,
it says.
that's what I'm
Right.
saying, unless subjective.
We actually have a
Criteria.
There's someone with a raised hand.
Raise your hand.
Yeah.
Can I before, if Kevin were to send that photos of all of these buildings that you sent to me, these people would understand why those particular buildings were built. They look like crap.
They look like crap.
They're not well taken care of. They're all not, I don't think there's a 10-story building in them. And when you look at the square footage on them, you'll see the tiny little building in bad repair. And that must have been the reason why.
So they're
Kevin,
actually-
send that list to everyone, please.
So two things. To answer your question, John, according to the law, 1965 New York City landmark law, the criteria is one age requirement, building has to be 30 years old.
Sorry,
Or more, or more.
Well, according to ChatGPT's interpretation of landmark.
It's more than what I know. Special character or historic value, architectural significance, association with significant people or events, or integrity of the original.
But those are all subjective, it's not.
100%,
Yeah.
but it goes to the point that somebody went through and said that it somehow is.
All right.
So of the 95 buildings on this list, the list that you keep bringing up, Michael, is the 15 buildings within the Garment District that are different from this list. Those 15 are gonna be demolished, or subject for demolition. These 95 are not gonna be demolished, but these are eligible for,
Conversion?
either, well, yeah, subject to renovation law. But these 95 are eligible either for state national registry or local NYC landmark law. Some of them are landmark and some of them are state national registry, but they're either eligible or are. Within that umbrella are 95 buildings.
And the Garment District buildings that you sent me are not in that category at all? They're not
The
eligible?
list that I sent you, that you asked which buildings are gonna be demolished.
In the Garment, no, I asked which buildings in the Garment District are subject to this. And that's what you sent me, I believe. Rezoning, projected and potential development sites.
And it's too much work, because I actually went through and pulled out the ones.
Yes, yeah. Oh, is that what it is?
Yeah.
Okay. got it.
Anyway, so of these 95, some already are New York City landmark. 30 have been determined to be New York City landmark eligible. The idea on the table is to ask New York City Landmark Preservation Committee to actively review those 30 buildings that are eligible and go through and do a process and say, you know, check, no, check, yes, et cetera. So the vote would be, do we like that idea? Do we want that idea to be one of our ideas?
But right now, we're just taking questions on
I have
if people have
a
any questions.
process question.
Yeah.
Are we voting for this as written by Julie, what was sent around, or we're voting for it as a concept that someone else will then write up?
We can tweak it.
We can tweak the wording.
Yeah.
I mean, Sachi had some good edit. The MAS thing, obviously, we can go with that. The core of the resolution is asking LPC to review these 30 landmark eligible buildings and just ensure that they've been looked at and gone through a process before they get renovated or whatever God knows what's gonna happen to them.
Any questions about that before we move on to the second?
Yeah, I have a hand raised.
Okay.
So in a typical, like LPC can review these at any time that they want as is, and they're very well aware of these. I don't know why we're shining a flashlight on something that doesn't need to be shined on. Right? I mean, I think that there is a process here, and the language in this seems to handicap a very monumental housing bill that, you know, to the point earlier, there's old warehouses that are 3,000 square feet or 4,000 square feet are going to create a ton of affordable housing. So for the architectural striking buildings, LPC has a role to play, and they're going to play that role. I am shy about them landmarking other small buildings and pushing them to do that when there's an ability to have a lot of affordable housing there. So I'm kind of against any sort of language in this sense on this point. Thank you.
I have another process question. I'm so
Yeah,
sorry.
okay.
This document, this points of agreement document.
Yes,
is
yes.
entirely independent of our community board approval of the MSMX.
Correct.
It
Yep.
is purely a list of asks,
This is a wish list.
a wish list of asks.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
It should, wait a minute, let me just tell you. I'm sorry, I don't know why, it's my fault, it's my fault. Yeah, I don't know, it is, I was saying Dave's point, I mean, it is tough because we've lost many architecturally striking buildings that were not able to be landmarked, so I am confused by this, I have to say. I mean, the city's lost a lot already, particularly in the West 50s. It didn't matter that they were architecturally significant, cultural, or historically important, we lost them anyway.
Yeah.
So is this an endeavor to try to avoid those mistakes, or I guess I'm just not really fully sure why this is happening.
The idea is just to ensure that, I mean, obviously, if a building does get landmark status, it's protected and protection.
Sometimes,
I have a
unless you're,
Yeah, I'm not sure about that.
yeah, they don't,
It
they,
just means it goes through the public review process, LPC. A landmark
Correct.
building can be converted into housing, it can put an addition on the roof, you can do all the things that.
yeah,
public
many
review
developers have,
I mean, there's
Yeah.
also zoning issues, which are sort of separate, but I think the
But
thinking
becoming a
here.
landmark doesn't preclude it from the zoning, it still has all the same zoning
Correct,
rights that
yeah.
the new zoning ordinance would permit.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't come up with this proposal, but I think the thinking was that this is an opportunity for Landmark to sort of assert itself and say like, oh, like, while you're focusing on all of this, like, we want to remind you that like, there's these 30 buildings, like, we'd like you to take a look at it. And I think we're just taking advantage of this bigger, probably one of the biggest, zoning related changes in the city to say like, oh, this is what is important to the landmarks committee, and that's, I think, the reason it was supposed to be included here.
and I guess since we didn't choose them, right?
Well, one of our members of our.
Yeah, one of the
One of our
members.
members, so, okay, well, great, well then, okay, I think it's a great idea. I think it's a great idea.
I mean, someone took the time and effort.
These are questions, but
Yeah, I guess the question was in my mind, of why we're going through this is to prevent potentially these 30 buildings from being destroyed while we're going. That's the ultimate reason why we're going through this process. Are there any of these buildings we want to prevent from being destroyed, as new housing? No, right? Because we've done that, no, we did that with the Eastman.
I was gonna say the same thing, we did the same thing with East Midtown rezoning.
We've done this with all of these.
It's an opportunity.
Just on your first point, I don't think it's not us as a board saying, you know, don't demolish these.
Right. It's the
It's us as a board saying, LPC,
Yeah,
just take a
right.
look.
yeah, we're
and
not
you decide.
passing
Right,
judgment.
That's all we're saying.
I see, okay.
That's all we're saying.
Yeah.
Got it.
I think you're right.
Just on that point, we did it with Midtown East. The
Right.
community board took a
Yeah.
stand with Midtown East, and also, I think the three of us were on the 57th Street corridor
Yeah.
project, when all the super tolls were just starting to come about. There was a committee put together, or task force,
Task force.
to inspect all of the buildings across 57th Street. And all we did was submit a list to LPC to say, hey, take a look at these, because changes are happening so fast, that's all it was.
And what happened as a result?
They picked up a few of them, some they said are not eligible, but they did pick up a few of them, I agree. It was honestly just, with all these instances, including now, just for the community to have a voice in some of these major changes, that's all it is.
Got it, great.
I want to add so in looking over the language, I was comparing it to other language that also exists from other advocacy groups. And Julie directly copied and pasted this language from the Municipal Arts Society's recommendation, which the Municipal Arts Society is a preservation advocacy group. And I think it's entirely inappropriate for CP5 to be parroting and directly copying and pasting our recommendations from another advocacy group that is advocating directly to the city council. And you can tell that it's the direct language, and also our language, the one that Kevin sent out yesterday, includes the Municipal Arts Society. I think that, like, especially as a group, especially as a board that has been under scrutiny for conflicts of interest in the past couple of years, it's incredibly important for us to maintain our independence from other groups that are also advocating on this issue. So I would,
The question whether or not we can speak the language.
I am proposing that we should respeak the language. I have a proposal for, so that's one thing that I think that we should do. Another piece that I think is really important personally, and I put together, a proposal for tweaked language that goes along with this, is really in agreement with what David was saying about wanting to maintain the integrity of our landmarks and express to city council that this should be included in consideration of the rezoning, but also that housing, the amount of housing that we're producing should also be taken into consideration. So one of the precedents that I was looking at was for the East Midtown one, where there was a building that was built on top of a subway station, and the LPC specifically put in their statement, like, yes, like, this is a landmark, and also any changes that that need to be made to the building to facilitate the subway working should be done, and we want to take that into consideration as those changes are proposed. So in kind of in line and in like parallel with that similar kind of thinking, I think that like, this is my personal take, is the goal of the Midtown South rezoning is really important to bring more housing to our district, and the goal of preserving our historic buildings is also important. So my proposal would be that we put forward language that names both of those things in one statement, to say we are for LPC taking a look at buildings and designating them in accordance with their equity framework, and also that we want to maintain the goals of the rezoning, which are to increase housing, especially affordable housing. Sorry for not sending this out earlier. I'm gonna send it to everybody on the committee now, just in response as a reply to what Kevin sent, but I'll also read it out loud. So my proposed replacement language would be CV5 supports designations in line with LPC's equity framework that would not significantly decrease the amount of housing built in the Garment District. We believe landmark designations can coexist with thoughtful planning that advances critical goals like housing production. By drawing on LPC's own precedent, we encourage a balanced approach that both preserves our architectural heritage and supports dynamic and inclusive growth. CV5 remains committed to honoring the character of our built environment while also embracing forward-looking objectives of this rezoning effort. Sorry, that's a lot, y'all, but this is,
And the question is.
The question is,
adopt that language?
yeah, the question is like, what are the committee's thoughts on tweaking the language from Julie's in general, and also on the proposed language, and also on like marrying the two goals of preservation as well as housing production in one statement.
I guess just my question is, when you say LPC's framework, how is that, what is that?
So LPC's equity framework, and folks can also jump in if they know more than I do, is to honor buildings and architectural history that's not just the predominant culture or like white culture. So thinking about more historically marginalized groups and their contributions that aren't like necessarily like Romanesque or Art Deco or whatever. So it's in line with their resolution.
And this was like, brought by somewhere?
Yeah, I actually pulled that from Julie's.
Okay.
There's a press release from 2021 that like is LPC launches equity framework, and it's like a whole.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm all for affordable housing. I guess the question for the committee, in my mind, is proper jurisdiction. And I'm not sure, I'm just thinking, reacting as I hear you. Are we imposing, are we sort of, what's the word, bridging, we're getting into the jurisdiction of another committee.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
this sounds like a statement will come from a joint committee, maybe us, jointly with the zoning committee or whoever. I'm just not sure it's our purview, the landmarks we talked about, housing, outside of context of whether it's landmark law. It's just it's a jurisdictional issue, not being opposed. Where should it, if we do the vote, where should it? This sounds almost like a board vote. opposed to just a committee vote. I don't, you
Don't
know,
go before the board.
yeah, but what I mean is,
It's important to
come from
note,
a joint,
yeah,
a joint committee.
it's a really good point, John, because anything that comes out of this committee tonight is gonna be added to a full
Oh,
board
okay.
document.
All right, so
And that
it's just gonna be
full
one full
board
document. Okay.
Right. And that full board document is gonna have language about, we all love development, you know, we're in support of this plan, we voted for it, like, we're in favor of it. This POA document is more specific asks.
So then my question to you, to the two of you all, are you comfortable, voting on a resolution that some of your colleagues may feel is their purview? Yeah, I'll leave it at your law.
I guess, initially, we've got the proposal to ask LPC to review the 30 buildings that are landmark eligible. What I'm trying to get at is, so that's,
I'm referring
It's on the table.
I'm referring to budget.
right, so I'm trying to reconcile what you just said with that. Is this in addition to the 30? Is this equity framework, like,
Is it a replacement of, is that what you're asking, like, does it, like?
I'm proposing to replace the language.
so not ask them to do the 30?
I mean, I think that that could be a tweak that we could put into the language that I proposed, but I'm currently proposing not to make that, not to.
I guess I'm trying to, I mean, there's a lot of language here. I guess I'm trying to get at what's the issue here? Like, is equity framework the issue?
No, that's in.
No.
I guess
I
I'm
guess
trying to
here my
figure out
issue
what you're
with
asking.
Julie's, my issue with Julie's is that it's asking to hold up the ULURP, which is directly in
Right.
conflict with the vote that the whole board took, to move the
Right, that's
zoning
what you're
forward.
saying.
I also think that we shouldn't be using language that's copied and pasted from another advocacy.
That's
group.
fine.
We should
Yeah,
use our own
That's
language.
it, yeah.
And I'm all for putting in like, there are particular, ones that LPC should look at, but not holding up the ULURP and putting LPC should look at these with the full picture in mind. Like, is there a subway station under it? Do we want more housing? Is it a 2-unit building that like isn't adding to historical fabric and could otherwise be demolished and create 100 units?
Yeah.
Yeah, not 100, but you know what I mean.
Wouldn't LPC use that framework when analyzing, let's say, the 30 buildings? Like, that's
So this is,
That's
I
what
guess,
they need to do anyway, right?
yeah.
So I guess the question is whether or not it should hold up ULURP.
What you look at is 7 months, right? We have a time period, which is what you look at is, to do all of this work. So aren't we just doing it within the time frame? Why would we be cognizant of that? This is what we're supposed to be doing. But the, uniform land use process is to allow all of the public to weigh in. So how would it be cognizant of all?
The original language that I had sent around from Julie was part of it was asking for the ULURP to wait until the 30 sites were used by LPC. I guess another aspect of that, like
Is the reasoning there LPC doesn't get around to this stuff in time? Because there
Yeah,
was
in
such a
fact,
backlog?
traditionally LPC had such a backlog, was it 2 or 3 years ago that
Yes.
there was over 150 billion, they just cleared the backlog, and said,
Yeah.
sorry, we'll never get to it.
Right,
So
and
it
then,
really doesn't,
Yeah.
this is all wishful thinking,
Mhm.
that they really, but to say that, then to do it in a time frame and mandate you have to do it, like, our vote is contingent upon that happening, very unlikely.
yeah, that's the other. I mean,
This
these
is
are
like
just
a, this
asks,
is like
they
a
can ignore it.
recommendation, this is like an advisory.
Yeah. aren't we just
Like-
voting on a recommendation here?
Well, we always
Oh,
do.
yeah.
Yes, so,
Yeah.
I just feel like we're getting
Yeah, I
a
don't
little
think-
bit sideways here. I mean, we're a landmarks committee, this is a recommendation. I mean, don't we have 4 things to vote on? Let's.
Just to clarify, is what I'm hearing that it would not be realistic, like from a timing standpoint, given the backlog that the LPC has to actually go through with what Julie's proposing?
Yeah. Well, we can drop the U or part of it
Right.
and just ask for LPC to review the 30.
Yeah,
eligible sites.
Can I ask a follow-up, because this might be my naivete here, but, you know, I'm like 2025. We have some potential landmark buildings. Wouldn't we know something by now? Like in other words, is there information that exists already somewhere about the potential landmarkiness of these buildings? Like, I guess.
Generally, I mean, occasionally there's like new stuff that's discovered. Like I remember, like years ago, we had an applicant asking about a building in the jewelry district, which was demolished. And I think he had recently learned that like the first diamond store was set up there. And so there may be stuff that like once a building is flagged for demolition, then people may start researching and realize that there's like a lot of historical significance, which may not be like public knowledge really.
It happens all the time.
Yeah.
It happens more commonly than not. People aren't going around and, you know,
I mean,
trying to
people,
save the
yes,
building.
people should do that.
They should.
But landmarks that's not landmarks,
No.
to go look for buildings to landmark, believe it or not.
Right.
Because
Got it.
that's made with it, it's not really their job.
Got it.
And even like the Plaza Hotel tonight, it was designated landmark, I forget what year, the forties maybe, but the interior wasn't designated till like 30 years later.
Right.
So it only kind of, evolves, it's always,
I have yet
It's not
another
that
concept question here. So that we can like get past it, right? This language that's in this email that Julie originally drafted, that came, I definitely came from elsewhere and what have you, that it sounds like we're not in favor of using that exact language. Do we need to vote to say, we don't want that language, we want new language? No. Or
No.
like, how can we
Julie's language
move
is just
to
an idea,
like,
but we just
what
figure
are
out
we
a
gonna
way.
write,
You may-
right? Like,
you
not
may
you propose something.
Yeah.
It sounds like people maybe want some edits to that. Is it, do we just kind of go around and say, I want this edit? And like, how are we gonna actually come up with
We're not
something
gonna
that we?
vote on sentence structure.
Yeah.
What
I think it's sort of like the resolutions, like we come up with the concept, we know what we want there, and we can discuss that. And then someone will just write it up. And
Okay.
then I think and to the extent anyone wants to make changes, once it's circulated before the full board, like you can come with.
Oh,
your-
like in the 2 days before, if
Yeah.
someone had some real issue with it, they could come back and do it.
Yeah,
I think this is like a friendly amendment to Julie. Julie took the first pass and charged it.
Mhm.
We are all kind of, agree with the MA Municipal Society point of view, but we think it should be in our words. So great start, now we're adapting it to be in our own words. So I'm okay with that, I think Julie would be too.
Well,
Yeah,
I
right,
think
like you
Julie's
said.
original message might get lost though, Sachi, in yours. I think we're in agreement, it sounded like that, at least saying, hey, LPC, take a look at these, that was her main message. I don't see that here.
I'm open to,
We need to
language that
combine
would,
some.
yeah, that would take that language of specifically, we would like the LPC to look at these 30. I would be for putting this in mind, I would not be able to vote for it if it said that it would pull up to the list.
well, should we discuss it now quickly? Like, how do people feel about that issue? What do you?
I think, sharing on it's just unrealistic, right? It's not.
How do we make that power?
So we don't need to include it,
We
which.
say, we suggested be done before, or, we could,
Yeah.
within a certain timeframe. So that's practical.
I think that John raised a very good point, and we have to just sort of go back, if the language is lifted from this society, that we're not exactly in lockstep, but we're definitely, I don't really like the language that you used, and I wouldn't agree with that. I think that we're a landmark committee. I think we need to stay in our lane. It's just a recommendation. Many times they don't even move forward on it. We know what the overall City of Yes is. We know what the mission is of the city overall in terms of housing. I don't think this is going to block that, but I don't think we dilute who we are and all of a sudden speak to focusing on a lens in terms of housing that may be misconstrued in terms of who we are, what we represent, our priorities. That's what I would say.
So I guess my only comment is that this is like one sentence in a probably 12-page resolution from the community board. So it's not gonna be ultimately not going to be a landmarks thing, it's gonna be.
I didn't mean for it to be a whole big 5-page document. I'm just saying that you were speaking to the language. I thought we were just, and I think that that's a good idea. I don't think it should replicate another committee for sure, another organization. I think that's such a great call. But I think that we stay in our lane. I agree with what John said. And I think that we just vote on them, making a recommendation on looking at these buildings, and it'll be up to them because it's just a recommendation anyway, right?
Absolutely.
I'm not sure why we're getting sideways here.
So I'm gonna make a motion, in a real time a little bit. So a motion to, well, I guess we have to, but can you make a motion? Oh, all right.
Make a suggestion?
You can make a suggestion, and someone else can make a
Suggestion. We ask LPC to review the 30 LPC, landmark eligible buildings. You want to mention the equity framework?
I mean, you can stay consistent with their
Yeah.
framework. They need to do it.
And their
anyway.
They have to do it anyway. They absolutely have to do it anyway.
Yeah, but I'm fine mentioning it.
The 30 review.
Are you worried about Trump? Is it the equity we're just holding up at like a?
No, I'm going to take a look at equity framework. I'm just wondering which parts of this.
And that was it, and they added that. I mean, I tried to say the building purely based on that, so, I think that that's absolutely what they have to look at on our criteria.
Part of their regular guidelines.
Totally.
Part of their standard.
framework mean?
Yeah, well, it's from 2021, it's the guidelines that are adopted.
Hold on.
The LPC,
Okay.
so
And
that
we'll drop
they
the
had,
ruler, time report.
so it was buildings that otherwise wouldn't have been saved, but were historic.
Could you say anything before?
We could say as soon as practical.
Yeah, as soon as practical, before. Something which we're not suggesting in the whole
Yeah.
zoning to do this.
So recommended, if someone were to make a motion, would be to ask LPC to review the 30 buildings, include their LPC equity framework as soon as practical.
A second.
Well, what
There needs to be a motion.
I make a motion to do exactly what you said.
Second.
Okay,
Okay, so now we vote. Mark?
Yeah.
Sammy, yeah. John?
Yeah.
Michael?
I don't understand anything for what you're saying.
That's Dave, okay. Neil?
Yes.
David, you're still there?
Yes.
Gotcha. Justine?
Yeah.
Zona?
Yes.
Suzanne?
Yes.
Karen? Go back to you. Tony?
Yes.
Laura?
Yes.
Okay. That passes. Okay, it's done.
All right.
The remaining 3, hopefully it'll be a little less. Neil, you want to drive the bus? This is Neil, right?
Sure. So on 28th Street, between 6th and 7th is the flower district. There's a lot of wholesale flower shops, which is, I think, one of the most unique parts of Midtown. It's also right near me, so I always take friends and family that are visiting from out of town there. And I think we have an opportunity here to help celebrate and melt that history into development that's coming later. So I forwarded around just during this meeting to all of the people on the committee some draft language. I don't think that I just put that together and it has the ideas, and we should edit the language later. But I suggested some requests for funding for non-landmarks, non-LPC designation purposes. For example, cores, like the one Mike runs in the garment district, historical documentation, potentially incentives for incorporating, the wholesale flower industry into public spaces, and or museum or exhibit space in the future building. And I think the biggest ask that we should, these are all just ideas that I came up with, and I'm not a business owner or wholesale flower expert. So I think the biggest ask should be just to maybe reach out to people in the industry in the area to see what ideas people could come up with. There wasn't like a particular organization. I think there's just 8 businesses there that sometimes talk about things collectively. So there's no, I couldn't come up with, I can't pull a specific ask from them, but this is just saying that there's an opportunity here for either the city councilor, relevant city agency to do something creative here.
Any questions or comments?
I think it's a fantastic idea, Neil. I love this idea. This is really great. And we've seen this area change. And so if we can save it and improve it, it's just so important. And so good for you, Neil. And I would only add maybe like an environmental or educational, maybe something in the language. I'm not sure what that is, but there's so much interesting evolution in roof gardens and, trying to advance the city in this particular discipline, in this industry. It poses a lot of opportunity as well, as an area that might end up surprisingly be a valuable industry progressively, not only from a landmark standpoint. So having those things blend, I think it's a great idea.
Yeah, absolutely. And as I was sort of musing about it earlier, we can't will this into existence, but like a rooftop garden or exhibit space on one of the new buildings that's built could be like amazing. It's like a new High Line or tourist destination. And the other thing,
Organic vegetables.
one other piece or 2 other pieces I forgot to add could be like street renaming or ceremonial street renaming, like Tin Pan Alley across 6th Avenue, or historical markers for the area. And I think those are in the email.
So one thing that I was thinking about from purely looking at it from a landmarks perspective is that like the buildings themselves, I don't think that there's necessarily anything unique about them. It's really more of like the private businesses that are in those businesses. But then I also think about the Ladies Mile Historic District, which was also recognized primarily because of the private businesses that were those buildings. But of course, those buildings do have like architectural significance as well. But yeah, I mean, I think for the purposes of this document, it's something that we can request, just sort of recognition of the industry that
As a district.
Yeah, that inhabits this area, but it's just it's a little unique because the buildings themselves are like nothing.
Yeah, but Tin Pan Alley, I mean, it's hard to say.
Yeah, the Tin Pan Alley is something sort of separate
Well, it's
from,
music.
yeah, from the flower.
Neil, again, this is fantastic. Thank you. And I think for years, the community itself has, kind of shuddered and seen all the flower district completely disappear to a point. It's changed so much. And so much of that stretch of 28th Street is all hotels now, which is really unfortunate. Just one of your points, I had it here, you mentioned like historic markers on the street and whatnot. I don't really think that's practical because it's not a historic district. I don't know if that's a request we should make. What's that?
Sorry, I shouldn't have.
No, please.
Isn't it the ask to sort of recognize it as a historic district, right?
That's what I'm
Isn't
getting
that
at.
the ask?
That's what I'm getting at is basically what you're saying. Are you asking to designate a new district for LPC to review? Because that would put some different things in motion. I don't think that they'll put, the brown street signs, right? That are the official historic placards and all that for the street to designate it. I don't think they'll do that for non-historic districts. So overall, I'm wondering if that's what you're after.
And I think personally, I wouldn't want to add the historic district, you know, in a way that impedes the district's further evolution, you know, because, you know, in part because I think we can't preserve the flower uses. We're just preserving the buildings, and the flowers will continue to get priced out. I think, I mean, I know that the Transportation and Environment Committee, which I'm on, is the one that reviews like street placards or ceremonial district names. And I don't think there's a rule against putting like a historical marker or a sidewalk button if it's not in a historic district. And if there is, then we can say like, hey, you know, this is a place to waive that rule.
Yeah, that's not the Brown historical.
The Ladies Mile District and that, you know, all the ladies dress shops that were there.
Yeah.
Designated are now gone.
Right. So it's basically, what do they call those? There's a name for those designations where you put an additional like person's name way. That's what it sounds like versus what I'm picturing with the Brown historical placard, which is specific.
Maybe, I didn't hear all of Neil's suggestion, but maybe it's a designate these, maybe it's a suggestion, not prescriptive. Put a marker this way there. Maybe consider a way to acknowledge the historic past in some designation. And we make a suggestion, like we're not designing it or figuring it out.
Yeah.
Right. Acknowledging the past history, something like that.
Yeah. Oh, I was just gonna add, I don't know if this is a technical way of thinking about it, but it is really there are not many actual districts anymore, and the Flower District is like one of the last like trade-based districts. I feel like it's totally in line with what the Landmarks Committee would be about, to just try to push to not let that get erased from history, right? Like, so it's not necessarily an actual landmark, but it is a vestige of New York City history that's still alive, right?
Yeah.
So I feel like maybe underscoring that aspect in some way could be helpful to strengthen Neil's point.
It's a good point.
Do we want it sounds like, going for wrong, asking it to be a landmark district is sort of taking that to
I
another
think that's
level.
never gonna go anywhere.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's about something.
It's too much. So
That's something.
the only reason that got
That would be
brought
a
up
separate
is because
project.
I was understanding he wanted the specific signage, which is for landmark districts. But it doesn't sound like that's the case, so that doesn't matter, because it'll never apply for a landmark district.
Okay, so we're just talking about kind of the bullets that Neil sent around here, funding for some of these.
Recognition of what it is.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have a question, though, if we're all keen on acknowledging the history and the rich fabric of the flower district, do we feel the same way about the garment and manufacturing district? Like right now, we might think it's sort of passé, because it's been neglected and changed, but how do we know in 20 or 30 years from now, people won't look back and say, look what they did to the garment manufacturing district, what time this was vibrant, things were made here and designed here, and absolutely.
Is anyone familiar with
We also
garment?
be acknowledged. But
Is anyone familiar with that?
Yeah, I'm an old guy, and my father was a furrier, and I used to go to the fur district. Did you know that there was a fur district?
Yeah.
FIT exists. Where the fur district was. There's a flower district, there's a fur district, there's a garment district, there's a Lower East Side district. There's districts all over the place that aren't.
There was a meat pad. I live on Hyanna Road from Carnegie
So they
Hall
put
and
up
all
the
of that.
Fashion Avenue sign on it, and I gotta find one because half of them are gone already, and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I think it's a great idea that Neil had to take that 8 remaining flower people, because soon there's gonna be 4, and then there's gonna be 2, and then there's gonna be none. Just like in the garment district, there's gonna be none eventually. It's just evolution, and that's what's happening. And let's somehow give it, without making it a designated landmark, somehow put something on it to say, look, this is great, the Lower East Side. Poverty, immigrants, today you can't afford to live there, right? But it's still the Lower East Side, and people remember it's push carts and then people walking down the street and stuff. So all of this history stuff, it would be great if we could remember it and somehow,
The thing
think that we should make a similar push for the garment district or any other?
Every one of them, the flower and the garment and the furniture.
Well, I'm thinking of hours for right now.
Could we integrate that language into, I mean, when we do the final reso, like, Neil has some language about flowers, could we just also add garments?
I mean, we could probably just.
That's a good idea.
Like,
That's a really good idea.
Yeah.
I think that part of the idea I had was that the garment district is sort of a model. Like there are tours, there's sculptures, there's books. It's sort of it's a known entity because it's been preserved, formally and informally for a long time. So I think getting, going towards that for the flower district, which doesn't have that infrastructure, would be great. I think maybe they're sort of separate. In the final thing, maybe they're separate asks because, there's tours for the district aren't, there isn't a similar infrastructure for flowers.
It seems like we're all in favor of this in general. Do we want to make a motion to kind of like approve this and then maybe somebody want to volunteer to work with Neil?
I'll work with Neil on it.
Great. And then kind of nail down some
That's
specific.
okay, Neil.
I mean,
We'll
it
get
sounds
you a
like-
sign, a Neil Miller sign.
Yeah, great. Okay. Hirschberg? Yeah.
Yeah.
Way to remember me.
Record flower district, yeah. Okay, somebody has to make.
I make a motion to approve.
Okay, Mark,
Yes.
I'm a yes. John?
Yeah.
Mike?
Yes.
Neil, the yes, I think. David?
I'm a yes.
Sachi?
Yes.
Justin?
Yes.
Lona?
Yes.
Suzanne?
Yes.
Tony?
Yes.
Did you guys get my vote? Yes.
I did, yeah. Karen? Yes. Oh, you were out. It passed either way, but did you have a vote on the LPC 30?
Yes.
Yes. Got it. Okay, and the last two.
Oh, and Milan was a yes.
Milan,
Catch me.
I got yours. The last two were Brad's two ideas. I suggest we bundle them because they're basically the same. One is funding for inspections to ensure compliance with landmark laws. And two is funding for a study to determine, well, they're not the same, but they're both kind of important. Funding for a study to determine the value of landmarks properties to ensure that they're getting the maximum value.
Repeat that again, sorry.
Funding for,
I don't understand.
Who would the funding go to?
I don't understand that.
Who would receive money to do a study?
It would probably be a consultant to study that and the market values and basically the effect on a building that's not landmarked, once it's landmarked, how it impacts the valuation of that building and any sort of, well, how they can exploit air rights and how that affects the valuation of the building.
We're talking about the delta between what it is now and what it would be.
I think that's what Brad was
Yes.
going for,
so
right?
the wording that Brad said, funding for a study, that's the key part. Funding for a study to determine the value market for a landmark TDR in CB5 to ensure that the landmark properties are able to properly leverage their development rights for maintenance and upgrades. So I presume that means the building is worth, they think their building is worth X, but it's actually worth 2X. And they can get loans and everything else off of that to pay for.
Yeah, it's really, it's more than the building. It's really studying the value of those development rights and making sure that the owner of the building can monetize it in a way that would cover the maintenance and like upgrades. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
That's what you just said.
that's
That
the
makes
main
sense.
thing.
Brad is secretly listening.
Can I ask a question about landmark designation for a building? In my opinion, if a building is landmark, I would think that the value of that building, the retail or anything else goes down. Am I wrong? Or does it go up?
Yeah.
It goes down because the guy who owns it is now has to repair it in this and this a way, and it might cost more money if he could do it that way if it wasn't.
Different, are you converting the Flatiron building to condo and cashing in that way? you know,
Or the
think of the money
plaza?
goes there.
I don't think there's a blanket answer.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
So in certain cases and other
Right.
cases, yeah, they could go both.
I think it's
For single residents.
something they've seen a devalue, unfortunately.
100%, a landmark building it has a decreased value.
One of the things the landmarks
You're
project
taking
is
risks.
trying to do for the last 10, 20 years is make less of a burden. If you are the owner of a landmark, that's why they approve so much more at staff level. We see so many less
To make it a
applications.
little easier.
Yeah, they're making, if you follow these rules, you can do what you want. I mean, they're trying to appeal that it should not be a hardship.
Well,
There was a
as long
study
as-
on this, though.
as long as I've been in this committee, I've heard arguments that the bottom line is that it's tougher to own a landmark building than a non-landmark building.
It's definitely tougher, but they're also usually like one of a kind buildings, so it's like.
Yeah, but that's not the argument though, right? The argument is whether or not, if you landmark a building, whether or not the building is gonna be less valued or more valued. There's more maintenance and CapEx, and there's a process to actually go through this to maintain a building. So it's 100%. If you build the most beautiful building in the world, the plaza today will be more valuable if it was not landmarked. Like that's just math, right? That's a business plan. That's math. Like
Yes, and there's
it's a
that
hard. I don't know how you argue that.
Can I ask
I
you,
mean, the only way to argue it, which I wouldn't argue with you, but is that, you can't quantify the value of culture. You can't value, people come to New
No,
York.
I understand that. That's not the argument though.
Talking, would you just give me a minute? You can't quantify when people come to New York and they're not gonna go to maybe the break, they wanna see some of the new buildings, and some people come to New York because they wanna see old New York and they wanna see the plaza, and these are tourists, and they wanna go to Broadway, or they wanna go to the Flower District, or they wanna, whatever they wanna do, that our historic appeal has a value that is harder to quantify. I 100% hear you, David, and I know what you're saying, but there is that other layer to it that we're also speaking to, right? That's just much harder to quantify or put a value on.
Yeah.
Okay, we're gonna move on then.
I just want to quickly reiterate that we're talking about the study of TDRs here.
Yeah.
right.
So just to make sure our discussion sort of stays on that track.
So to that point, is the reason we should care about this? Because on the surface, I'm like, why should the landmarks committee care about the property values of these places? But is the logic that by understanding the property values or the potential, that means there is a higher likelihood of like the maintenance or investment in said landmark buildings that could help further preserve them?
Yes.
Because is that,
That'll fund their maintenance and repair.
right, okay.
Is the property values or the air rights value?
Right.
The values of the TDR.
The
So,
silver air
yeah.
rights that they
Right, so
came.
why is there a discrepancy between what the value of those air rights are? Right, because the landmark can sell their air rights. And in turn, that triggers that 74-711, which then puts forward a maintenance plan. Right?
Apparently, the upzoning makes these rights less valuable.
You could actually argue the opposite. You could say by the increased development that folks are going to be, when they're going to be building up, they're going to go and they're going to buy those additional TDRs, because the cost to build, you have economies of scale when you start getting higher and higher, and so the actual cost of the air rights is less. And so I could make the argument on the opposite. I could argue that a lot of those air rights are actually going to be bought with this upzoning of the area.
Yeah, it sounds like because there's conflicting opinions here, it sounds like this sort of justifies the need for a study.
Well, I've always felt that, I've also observed, I've seen studies that argue both sides.
Yeah.
And the conclusion I've made, I have to ask myself, who's doing the study, who wants their vested interest? And magically, people who are in favor of landmarks, like I say, it increases value. For instance, we can get a Google or Facebook to come in, if we, that has an attraction in itself. On the other hand, a lot of real estate developers have to do the studies to say the opposite. So, yeah, I agree. If we could have an objective study, it would be right.
Yep.
That's such a good point.
challenge would be to pick someone who's gonna,
Yeah,
you
in the middle of the road.
right down
Yeah, all we would be suggesting or calling for here is a study.
No, I understand that, we're getting off
That's-
track.
yeah.
What we voted for is different.
Yeah, that's their problem, to find someone who's effective, not part So do people have any objections to this concept of the study? No. Okay.
Can you forward me the language? Because I haven't seen the language for this. Did somebody get an email with this?
Yeah, I'll send it to you.
I'm okay with tracking, the market price of TDRs. Like these are, there usually are a couple of research reports that are done by commercial entities every year that talk about air right costs for across the city. I'm kind of fine with that, but I don't know what the language looks like.
That's what we're asking for, to publicly fund those
Just
studies as opposed to, right now, they're privately funded.
Yeah, by only
They're
interest
private,
rates.
like, if you own the building and you're curious, how much can I get for my air rights, but you get, like, these studies exist, they're usually privately funded, not publicly funded.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, okay. Someone want to make a motion?
Sorry, my 2 cents here, just from understanding the marketplace here, I really do think that we're going to see a lot more sale of landmarked rights in this district when this rezoning happens. I think that there's going to be a significant influx of capital to landmark buildings with this, because when right now there's very limited development, when you have new development and you have new capitalization where there's business plans that are put together to put together affordable housing, folks want to build as much as they possibly can because of economies of scale. So I think that there's going to be a big opportunity here for landmarks to have maintenance and CapEx.
Yep, I mean, I think that would be reflected in the study, but yeah.
I'm planning to vote no on the study, just, I don't know enough about the current process and putting public money, which is something that's currently privately funded, feels like a waste of public money.
I don't know if there is a private fund though, since it's not, I'm not familiar with that.
Well, I guess if you're, I don't know enough about, I guess like, to me, this seems like we're saying that public money should go to a study that then supports people who are thinking about converting, it's unclear to me what value
The money
this is.
is already in that, what do you call it? It's that bucket of money that everyone has to contribute to. It's like we do Midtown zoning. It's that money. It's the money that's already in this, like, kitty.
If there's money that could go
It's
to
not like taxpayers.
public.
Yeah, I don't think they're gonna like
improvements,
levy additional taxes for them.
No, I'm just saying, like, in
No,
general, we should use public funds effectively and efficiently, and I don't think personally that this is effective use of public funds.
I don't think it's-
Folks, all these TDRs are publicly recorded. Like, they're all, you can go online. New York City has a database, and you can, or not a database, but for each individual property, you can go and see what the TDRs are sold for. So like, I mean, it's reasonably easy to go through that and find that information. Again, like, resources are limited, so I don't want to like throw resources into something that we don't necessarily need to throw resources into.
I wouldn't.
This is a
not vote
recommendation
for
though,
it.
right?
Yeah, this is a
This is a
recommendation for
recommendation.
study. We don't know the cost of it, whether
We don't know
it
if
probably won't ever happen.
Right,
realistically.
exactly. I mean, I think we're voting on something that,
Yeah, I wouldn't not vote for it because you're worried about spending the money.
or that it already exists, or.
Yeah, I mean, this is like census wish list.
I mean, if you don't want the study to exist for whatever reason, fine, but.
Yeah, and I'm going to vote for this. Just it's good evidence for future policy making. We are already making policy. In the last full board meeting, we, as a board, agreed to recommend a lower FAR for the southeast quadrant because we were concerned about CDR rights. So we're already using this to make policy. I think we should have actual data to inform future policy making. So I'm voting yes. I'll move to accept those two, make a motion to accept those two in favor of those two conditions from Brown.
For Meredith Cava.
Work.
Can you repeat number one, the Brad had two, can you repeat number one?
Yeah, I emailed them around the exact language, but it's basically funding for inspections to ensure that there's proper enforcement of landmark laws, and then fundings for a study, which we'll be talking about.
Okay, so, I would vote yeah.
Yes, I mean, yes. John?
Yes.
Right.
What are we voting on now?
Funding for inspections to like make sure that landmark laws are enforced. And also funding a study of, TDRs.
Yes.
Neil?
Yes.
David?
Yes, yes,
Sachi?
No.
Justine?
Yeah.
Zona?
Yes to both.
Suzanne?
Yes.
Karen?
Yes.
Tony?
Yes.
And Milan?
Yes to both.
Okay, and did anyone have any last minute additions to stand for this one? Or just wanna go home?
Yeah, so like, the only thing that I would, this may not even be appropriate, but I'll just say, I mean, in terms of what we do, but digital signage. It's a lot of, I'm not sure if this falls under our purview, so I'm just gonna throw it out there. For example, like the use of digital signage that's now being added on to facades, existing facades, and they shine into residential buildings. And so there doesn't seem to be any legislation or anything around how the approval, how that all comes to place. Like it doesn't go to a community board and says, by the way, this is an old hotel and we need some money, so we're going to agree to put a big, huge digital sign up. And oops, it shines into the light of this existing hotel that's barely surviving, and it shines into all these residential properties, 3 of them, and so I don't know if that even applies to our landmarks area, but
We were talking about non-landmark buildings, right? Because the landmarks, they would need to go for lots.
yeah, but I mean, sometimes they're older buildings or existing structures that are lovely, and people go, oh, that must be landmarked, and you're like, no, it's not. So there's a lot of beautiful old buildings that are in the West 50s and all kinds of, that aren't landmarked. And so, yes, the owner has the right to say, yeah, I'm gonna put up a digital sign. Anyway, I know, I don't even have the language on something like this, but this has come up now a couple of times. And a property owner in an older building that may or may not be landmarked puts it up, and it's hard to take it down, even though everybody knows it either shouldn't be there. There's no grandfather clause, and yet we have digital signage, and we need digital signage. It's part of who we are as a city, and it's, advertisements and so forth. And on balance, I just don't know. And when it has come up, and a family will come in and go like, my life is ruined, this sign is shining, all these residents, I can't live, I can't sleep, I can't whatever, because one building decided to put up one sign. And when I know that these people in this building have looked into it, it was like, well, there's no rules around this. So they couldn't cite any legislation, so it's,
That's not true.
well,
Signage
that's
by
what
the
that,
zoning resolution.
but that's the answer that they got was.
Yeah, 100%.
So in a commercial, so how about so if there's residential properties, as there are residential properties and some places aren't just purely commercial zones. So some areas are going to be commercially zoned, but there's residential buildings. What for them?
If you're a residential building in a manufacturing zone or in Times Square and that promotes signage, it totally.
But there's other commercial zones that are, okay, I guess that's the language, I guess the language is if you're unfortunate enough to be.
Has its own zoning, signage guidelines.
Right, so if you're a pre-existing residential building that happens to be in an area that's been rezoned to commercial, then, and someone puts up a digital sign, then you're out of luck. And that's just the law, that's just how it's. I'm just wondering if that's, I didn't know, and I just thought I would ask the question, or if it's an issue.
Funding for a study to examine the impact of digital signage on residential buildings.
Oh, are you suggesting that in this rezoning, we make sure that?
Yeah, a little bit. It's just that it's happened to a couple, you know, in the rezoning, there's a lot of lovely older residential buildings and people that live in areas that are now commercial zoned, or, you know, mixed use areas, and there are, digital signs that are going up. And so when the residential building or the hotel says, well, wait, what about my hotel? Now I have this digital sign that's bothering all of it's ruining my business. Or these residential people say, I have this digital sign and it's ruining our lives. I don't, you know, this came up and it was like, well, we don't have any legislation around it. Nobody knows how to sort of say yes or no to this because it's kind of just happening because it's a technological type of thing that's happened, and it's alluring and it's digital and it's fun. And so it's great for advertisements, but it might be harmful environmentally and otherwise for people around it. That's all I'm saying. You know, and so it doesn't, this is not a personal thing. This is not personally happening to me. I just know that this has happened to many other people. So that would be one thing that came to mind. But I don't know the language around it, but yes, as things become more commercially zoned and so forth, this will continue to be a reality. And we don't have any kind of.
But we're talking about converting to residential. We're taking manufacturing to residential.
Or maybe the impact of signage on maybe the new residents or,
But we could just ask for funding to do a study.
Can I ask something? Does this have to be reframed in the context of like landmarks for us to submit this? Like, do we have to get a landmark?
Gray area than our usual.
yeah.
I initially told Neil that the flower thing was no-go because of the landmarks. And, I was very wrong. So it's very.
Yeah, and this may not be a
much more
landmark
gray
thing
area.
either. It's just that, yeah, it's just something that I'm seeing happening, and so I don't know where it belongs or how it can be solved.
Belong in our bigger community board, right?
Yeah, I guess.
But I think it needs to sort of start here, not there.
I mean, there are.
Well, I don't know if they would know.
Yeah, maybe that's why, maybe it is land use.
I think it's definitely something more within their wheelhouse, but it's like, she's here.
In Midtown, when we did work on East Midtown, we know that was part of the town, they gave us the language. I didn't see that, are they, but what? Like, are we gonna have another right example where they give us the staff zoning language, and then we get to the nitty gritty, analyze.
Yeah. Like, I don't know if they do an environmental report. Like, did they put that in, but then.
I'm guessing they probably didn't think about it.
So that's on the environmental list, yeah.
The environmental impact statement.
And that would be part of
We
it,
wanted to
you
know
think?
what the code signage from, sorry, not code signage, permitted signs would be in this district. Like, we don't even know if it's good, bad, or indifferent. I haven't seen the proposed zoning language in this district.
Yeah.
I don't even.
Do you want to make a motion to specify that, or do you want to?
Maybe you could make suggestions more, though.
Yeah,
Land use
suggestion,
committee?
yes. Yeah, suggestion, yeah, for the land use, since I have no way of articulating this in a meaningful and accurate way. But yes, I guess that would be for the land use or the
We know
appropriate.
more about it than us,
I mean, we
right?
can, I'm not sure
I'm
we're
gonna
gonna be
put it
in there, but we can like mention it. But,
Exec will be 1 week from today, when we'll sit in a meeting with the other committee chairs and bring.
Well, that would be
all these
great.
things together.
It's coming up a lot in,
Okay, yeah, no, I share the concern. So we made it, good work, team.
Yeah.
I would be remiss, without mentioning the people who are in their last landmarks meeting tonight.
I was gonna say that.
Well, I wanted to bring up you.
This is my final landmarks meeting. I'm not reappointed.
You
Didn't see your point.
you did not reapply.
Yeah.
Oh, you're
Yeah.
leaving the board.
Yes,
Oh.
but, also, Sasha and Justine, their final meeting.
What?
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
You're not having fun.
I didn't realize.
Oh, you moved
Having more
on.
fun.
Good for you.
Oh, that's cool, that's great. So we're losing 3 members?
Yeah, we're getting
Go get
3,
You got 3?
Oh.
But there is something to learn.
I know, but you guys know so much, that's the thing, like, we don't want you to go. It's true.
On behalf of the grateful district, we thank you for your service.
yeah.
You made it, you made
Thank
everybody
you.
think for it. Think for it,
Justine
think
had
for it, love
perfect
that.
attendance.
Woohoo!
Nice.
So I'll wait for picture of you, 'cause I will be a body vote or something. May or may not.
When are the new positions? When's the turnovers?
So the final meeting is the full board meeting in May.
Right.
And then, I'm not sure when the new people would come
It's a
in.
moving target,
During the
because
mayor-
apparently whatever day the Manhattan Borough President's Office assigns to new people is the day they're done. The board can never have more than 50 people. If it happens to be the day before that meeting, then we're done before it. If it happens to be the day after that meeting, then it's after that meeting. Yeah, it's like, I was just asking Marisa about it. Apparently it's like a moving target up to the borough president.
Wait, so it's actually possible I would not need to give a committee report?
It's possible you could send it to Kevin. But good luck. Thanks. She thinks to me after the meeting, but like, it
Okay,
was
keep
like, every year
eye
it's
on
a
the
little
calendar.
different.
Okay.
So.
All right, good night, everybody.
Bye, bye, bye.
Y'all at the board.
Anybody else is coming back?